It was one of those nights when the town felt like it had fallen asleep and forgotten to wake up. The streets were empty. Even the drunks had gone home. The only sound in the station was the soft ticking of the clock above my desk. Slow, steady, almost hypnotic. 2:47 a.m. Nights like that can get under your skin. You start to notice things that aren't there. A creak in the floor, a flicker in the corner of your eye, your own reflection looking a second too slow in the glass. I'd been an officer in Brookhaven for almost 12 years, but that night something felt wrong. I remember leaning back in my chair, half listening to the radio static, when the phone rang. The red 911 light blinked once. Then again, I picked it up. Brookhaven PD, this is Officer Miller. What's your emergency? Silence. Not static. Not background noise. Just breath, a faint inhale. Then a whisper, barely there. Don't go outside. I froze. The voice was so soft, I thought I'd imagined it. A woman's voice, shaky, terrified. Ma'am, can you repeat that? Nothing. Just more breathing. I sat forward, pressing the receiver tighter to my ear. Ma'am, this is Officer Miller. Are you in danger? Then came the whisper again, this time lower, closer. He's already here. I felt my skin crawl. Who's here? Can you give me your address? But the line clicked. Gone. The dial tone filled the silence, long and cold. I stayed there, holding the phone like an idiot. Calls like that happen sometimes. Prank calls, wrong numbers, the usual nonsense. But something about her voice, it didn't feel like a prank. It felt real. I checked the caller ID. The number was blocked. No trace. Still, protocol's protocol. I logged the call and ran it through dispatch. They couldn't trace it either. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe someone drunk or scared. Maybe a bad dream. But I couldn't shake it. Those words kept repeating in my head like a loop. Don't go outside. By 3:05 a.m., I gave up pretending to work. I stepped out for a coffee, walked the machine by the window. The night air pressed against the glass like a thick black sea. Brookhaven was quiet. Too quiet. Then the phone rang again. I turned so fast I spilled coffee down my sleeve. I rushed back to the desk. Brookhaven PD, Officer Miller. Silence. Ma'am, is that you again? No answer. Just that same breathing. Slow. Uneven. Listen, I can help you, but I need to know where you are. What's your location? For a long moment, nothing. Then, so faint it sounded like wind. Do you see him? I froze. See who? The man in the dark. A chill ran straight through me. I glanced toward the window instinctively. The parking lot outside was empty. Just the glow of the street lamp and my cruiser under it. Ma'am, I said slowly, are you in danger right now? The whisper came back, trembling. He's looking at me. I swallowed hard. Where are you? I can send a car right now. But then, in a voice that barely sounded human, he's smiling. A noise came through the line. Not a scream, not a word. Just a wet, crackling sound, like air being dragged through a broken throat. Then silence again. The line went dead. My hands were shaking. I tried to redial, but nothing went through. Dispatch couldn't trace it. Same as before. No location, no number. I told myself it could be a bad connection. Maybe someone's radio frequency interfering. But deep down, I didn't believe it. I'd heard fear before. This wasn't fear. It was something worse. Around 3:20, I stepped outside. The air was colder than usual, sharp metallic. The town looked deserted. Even the insects were quiet. My cruiser sat under the lamp, engine cold. Beyond it, the road stretched out into darkness. For a second, I thought I saw a movement, a shadow crossing the far end of the lot. But when I looked again, there was nothing, just the wind tugging at an old paper flyer. I went back inside, locked the door behind me. I tried to get my mind off it, but every creak in the station made my heart jump. Around 3:30, I turned the radio on low, just for the company. A weather report, static, then silence again. That's when the phone rang a third time. The sound nearly stopped my heart. I picked it up, voice shaking this time. Brookhaven PD. The same breathing. The same low, broken whisper. Only now it sounded closer, like she was in the room with me. "Please," she said, "don't let him in." My throat went dry. "Ma'am, who are you talking about?" A pause, then a faint click, like a door latch. "He knocks first," she whispered, 3 times. I froze. "Where are you?" I asked again, louder this time, but she didn't answer. She just said, "He likes to watch." Then the line went dead again. Before I could even set the phone down, knock, 3 times. I swear my heart stopped. The sound came from the front door of the station. Slow, heavy, precise. Knock, knock, knock. I reached for my sidearm. My palms were slick with sweat. "Who's there?" I called out. No answer. I stepped closer, trying to see through the glass. The porch light buzzed weakly above the door, flickering just enough to make the shadows dance. There was no one there. I opened the door, weapon raised. Nothing. The parking lot was empty. The street beyond it, silent. Only the wind. I stood there for what felt like a full minute before I backed inside and locked the door again. I told myself it was kids. A prank. Someone saw the patrol car and thought it'd be funny. But the timing, the voice, that didn't add up. I checked the security camera feed. The timestamp matched the knocks. But the footage showed nothing. No one at the door. No movement at all. Just me, standing there, gun raised, and something in the reflection of the window behind me. A shape. I couldn't make it out. It was blurry like static or smoke trapped inside the lens. But it was tall. Too tall. I replayed it again and again until the screen flickered and the feed went black. I sat there in the silence, trying to breathe, trying to think. The air inside the station felt heavier, like it was full of static. The fluorescent lights buzzed louder. Then the phone rang again. I didn't want to answer. Every part of me screamed not to, but I did. Brookhaven P. Nothing. Then a whisper so faint it barely touched my ear. "He's behind you." I turned. No one. But something had changed. The window blinds near the desk were moving just a little, as if someone had brushed past them. I stared at them, frozen, until they stilled. I whispered into the receiver. "What you mean?" The line hissed softly. Then I heard it again, that faint, wet breathing. Only now it wasn't through the phone. It was behind me. I turned fast, chair scraping against the floor. Nothing. The lights flickered once. Twice. Then the phone went dead again. I don't remember the next few minutes clearly. I just remember the sound of my own breathing. Too loud in the quiet room. I remember checking every corner of the station, every door, every shadow. Nothing. By the time dawn came, I was still sitting there wide-eyed, waiting for the phone to ring again. It never did. When I checked the call logs later, the dispatcher said no calls had come through that night. None. The phone hadn't even been connected to the external line. We'd been under system maintenance since midnight. But I remember it. I heard her. I still hear her sometimes. When the station is quiet. When the air goes still. When the clock ticks too loud. That whisper. "Don't go outside." And I don't. Not anymore. After that night, I couldn't stop thinking about the call. I told myself it was just exhaustion. Maybe even a dream. But the way that voice had cracked when she whispered, it stuck with me. I could still hear it sometimes when the radio went quiet. "He's already here." 3 nights later, I got the same shift. Midnight to 6. The graveyard hours. Brookhaven always looked different at night, like it was pretending to be something else. Emptier, colder, quieter than it had any right to be. I told myself I'd keep the patrol short, just the main roads, enough to clear my head. The clock hit 12:03 when I signed out the keys. The air outside felt heavy, pressing against my skin like a damp blanket. The fog had rolled in from the lake, thick and low, swallowing the edges of the streetlights. The cruiser's engine groaned awake, echoing across the empty lot. The headlights cut through the fog in 2 long tunnels of pale gold. I didn't even turn on the radio. I just drove. Main Street looked dead. The old diner sign flickered, half the letters gone, buzzing weakly in the dark. Haley's DIN instead of Haley's Diner. There used to be music spilling out from that place every Friday night. Now it was boarded up, windows painted black. I slowed as I passed it. The air around the car felt colder there, like the temperature dropped just for that block. I tried the spotlight, sweeping it across the storefronts. Empty, dusty, even the for sale signs were faded. That's the thing about small towns. They rock quietly. You don't notice it happening until one night you realize most of the lights never come back on. The police radio crackled once, just static. I tapped the mic. Nothing. It was 12:41 when I turned down Maple Avenue. The fog was thicker there. I could barely see the road ahead. The houses on either side were just faint outlines, sagging porches, peeling paint, dead lawns. I remember delivering newspapers on this street when I was 16. Back then, every porch light would be on. Mrs. Dunn from 42 Maple used to wave at me from her rocking chair, even in the dead of night. But tonight, every house was dark. Every window blind was drawn tight. I rolled the cruiser to a crawl, headlights cutting through fog like knives through milk. That's when I noticed it. A flicker. Just a single porch light. 3 houses down on the left. It blinked on and off. Slow, unsteady, like someone was standing there, flipping the switch. I stopped the car. For a long time, I just stared at it, trying to convince myself it was nothing. Probably a loose bulb. But something about it, it wasn't random. It was too slow, too deliberate. On, off, on, off. I rolled the window down, listening. Nothing but the hum of the engine. Then I heard something else. A soft tapping sound, coming from somewhere deeper in the fog. Tap, tap, pause, tap. I turned off the engine. The cruiser went silent. The world outside was just fog and stillness. The tapping stopped. Dispatch, I said, pressing the mic again. This is Unit 12, checking on 39 Maple. Possible disturbance. Static. I tried again. Dispatch, do you copy? Still nothing. That's when I realized how quiet everything was. No wind, no crickets, no distant traffic. Just the sound of my own breathing. I should have stayed in the car. I know that now. But back then, I told myself it was just a light malfunction, maybe a raccoon knocking around some trash. I was an officer. I had a job. I stepped out. The fog swallowed me instantly. My flashlight beam barely reached past my arm. I followed the edge of the road until I found the walkway leading up to the house. The grass was overgrown, wet with dew. I could feel it soaking through my boots. The porch light flickered again. Each time it blinked, I caught glimpses of the front door. White paint peeling in strips. A wreath hanging lopsided. And on the step, something small. I moved closer. It was an old rotary phone. The kind you'd see in old movies, cord coiled neatly beside it. I crouched down, flashlight trembling in my hand. The phone wasn't connected to anything. The cord was cut clean, the end frayed. I reached out and touched it. Cold. I don't know why, but I lifted the receiver. The dial tone hummed faintly. Impossible. I froze, pressing it closer to my ear. And through the static, I heard it, that same voice. Don't go outside. I dropped the receiver so fast it clattered against the porch. My breath came out in clouds. I looked around, but the street was empty. No movement, no sound, just that flickering light, and the fog pressing in tight. I forced myself to pick the phone up again, but when I lifted it this time, it was dead. No sound at all. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I backed away from the porch, eyes scanning every shadow, every window. That's when the porch light stopped flickering. It stayed on, steady, too steady. And from the upper window, behind the curtain, I saw a shape. Someone standing there, just barely visible through the fog glass. Tall, motionless, watching me. I shined the flashlight up, but the glass reflected the beam. When I lowered it, the shape was gone. My radio hissed suddenly, loud and sharp. I jumped. Unit 12, do you copy? It was dispatch. I grabbed the mic. Yes, this is Unit 12. I'm at 39 Maple. Possible break-in. Negative, the voice said. That property's been condemned for 5 years. No one lives there. I stared at the house. There's a light on. Someone's inside. Silence. Then, "Are you sure, Miller?" I didn't answer. The porch light flickered again. Then it went out. Complete darkness. I took one step back, flashlight beam sweeping wildly. The house loomed above me, its windows dark and blank. That's when I heard the sound, soft, faint, but close. The rotary phone on the porch. It was ringing, slow, clear, echoing through the fog, like it had all the space in the world. Ring, ring, ring. My mouth went dry. I couldn't move. The voice on the phone that night had told me not to go outside. And here I was, standing in the dark, holding my breath while that same sound pulled at me like a rope. I wanted to walk away. I really did. But something deep in my gut made me stay. The ringing stopped. And then, just for a second, I thought I heard it again. Not from the phone. From somewhere behind me. I turned. The fog shifted. Shapes moved in it. Slow, bending like smoke. I blinked, trying to focus. Nothing there. The silence after that felt too big. Too empty. I backed toward the cruiser, not taking my eyes off the house. My hand was shaking so hard I could barely hold the flashlight steady. When I finally got in the car, I locked the doors and just sat there, breathing. The headlights lit up the fog like a solid wall. Then the radio crackled again. Unit 12 status check. I press a mic. I'm fine. Just checking something out. But even as I said it, I looked at the house again and saw the porch light turn on. Only this time, it wasn't flickering. It was flashing 3 times. On, off, on, off, on. Then dark again. 3 times. Just like the knocks on the station door that night. I sat there frozen until the fog began to lift, until the shape of the house faded into nothing but shadow and wood and quiet. When I finally drove off, I didn't look back. I just kept driving, past the empty houses, the broken streetlights, the cracked pavement that led nowhere. By the time I reached Main Street, the fog was almost gone. The town looked normal again, quiet, harmless, but I knew it wasn't. Something had changed, because in the rear view mirror, down the middle of that foggy road, I could still see the faint glow of a porch light, blinking, once, twice, then steady, like someone was still standing there, waiting, watching. I didn't sleep after that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that house, the flickering light, the shape in the window, the phone ringing in the fog. I told myself it was fatigue, hallucinations brought on by exhaustion, but deep down I knew better. Something had followed me from that street. I started noticing small things first. The hum of the lights in the station got louder each night, like a swarm of bees behind the ceiling tiles. The clock on the wall would tick, skip, then tick again, out of rhythm. And sometimes I'd feel it, that cold weight of being watched. You know that feeling you get when someone's standing behind you? That soft pull in your gut that says don't turn around? That's what it felt like. Only, there was never anyone there. The next evening, Captain Haynes asked me about my report. He said there was no record of any 911 call that night. None on the logs, none on dispatch. He even showed me the system maintenance notice. Confirmed it had been offline since midnight. But I remember answering it. I heard her voice. I heard every word. He told me to take a couple nights off. Said I was overworked. But the way he looked at me, it wasn't sympathy. It was worry. I didn't take the nights off. Instead, I went back to Maple Avenue. The fog was lighter that night, but the silence still hung heavy, like the whole town was holding its breath. When I reached the house, 39 Maple, it looked worse in daylight than it had in the dark. The porch steps were cracked, the windows coated with dust thick enough to hide the inside completely. No lights, no signs of life. I parked the cruiser at the curb and walked up the porch. The rotary phone was gone. There was only a faint ring-shaped mark in the dust where it had been sitting. I tried the door. Locked. But when I pressed my ear against the wood, I thought I heard something. So faint I almost didn't believe it. A whisper. It wasn't words. Just a rhythm. 3 slow knocks. I backed off the porch. My stomach turned cold. The air around that house didn't feel right. It was like sound couldn't breathe there. Even the birds avoided the trees nearby. I turned back toward the car, but stopped. Across the street, a curtain moved. The house opposite, number 38, looked empty too. But I could have sworn I saw someone pull the curtain aside. Just for a moment. A pale hand, maybe. Then it fell back into place. I called out, "Brookhaven PD?" No answer. I crossed the street. The steps creaked under my boots. The air smelled stale, like mold and something faintly sweet, like rot beneath perfume. The front door was slightly open, not wide enough to be broken in, just left that way. I pushed it gently. The hinges cried softly. Inside, the air was thick, cold. Dust hung in the beam of my flashlight, like falling ash. There were footprints on the floor, leading down the hallway. Bare feet, small. "Hello," I said quietly. "This is Officer Miller. Is someone here?" The sound of my own voice didn't echo. It just stopped, like the air swallowed a whole. I followed the prints to a back room. The door was cracked. On the other side, I heard a soft scraping sound. My hand tightened around the flashlight. I nudged the door open slowly. The room was empty. Just a broken chair, a few scattered papers, and on the far wall, a phone, mounted right into the plaster, old as the house itself. The kind with the coiled cord and the brass dial. The receiver hung loose, swinging slightly, and when it turned toward me, I saw it. The earpiece was wet, not like it had been wiped, like someone had pressed their mouth against it. I stepped closer, shining the light along the wall. There were markings near the phone, long, uneven scratches carved into plaster. At first, I thought they were random, but when I leaned in, I saw numbers. Over and over again, my chest tightened. I reached for the receiver. The moment I touched it, the line came alive. A hiss, static. Then, her voice. "He's already here." I stumbled back, so fast I hit the chair. The sound cut off instantly. The phone just swung there, motionless again. I stood frozen for what felt like forever before I forced myself out of the house. When I stepped back into the street, the fog had thickened again. The cruiser was barely visible through it, but there was something else too. A figure, far down the road, standing still in the middle of the street. I couldn't make out the face, just the shape, tall, still. I blinked once, and it was gone. I got in the car and drove straight back to the station. My hands were trembling the whole time. Inside, I pulled the security footage from the dash cam. I wanted to prove it, to myself, to anyone. But when I play it back, the entire recording from Maple Avenue was gone. Cut out clean. The footage jumped from Main Street to me pulling into the station. No footage, no sound, like the car had never been there. That night, I stayed in the station long after my shift ended. The place felt colder now, emptier. I could hear the hum of the fluorescent lights again, the same steady buzz, like static crawling inside my skull. Around 2:15, the phone rang. I didn't want to answer it. Every muscle in my body screamed no, but I did. "Brookhaven PD," I said, voice shaking. No answer. I almost hung up, but then, faintly, so faintly I thought it was my imagination, Officer Miller. The voice wasn't the woman's this time. It was a man, deep, calm, almost patient. "Who is this?" I said. Silence. Then, "She told you not to go outside." My throat went dry. "Who are you?" I said again, louder. A pause. Then a soft, almost polite whisper. "You didn't listen." The line went dead. I tried redialing, but the phone gave only static. That night, I sat there until dawn, staring at the phone. The feeling of being watched grew heavier, like the walls themselves were leaning in. When the morning shift came in, I must have looked insane, unshaven, pale, eyes bloodshot. I told them I got another call, but they checked the logs again. Nothing. No incoming calls. Every line had been disconnected since midnight. I went home after that, but even there, it didn't stop. The house felt wrong. Every corner of it. The light from the street stretched through the blinds in thin white lines that looked like cracks. That night, I woke up to the sound of the dial tone. It was faint, coming from somewhere downstairs. I didn't own a landline. I sat up listening. The tone cut out. Silence. Then 3 knocks. Slow. Heavy. Knock. 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 Right at the front door. I didn't move. I couldn't. The knocks didn't come again. When I finally worked up the courage to check, the porch was empty, but there, sitting on the mat, was a phone. Old rotary. Black. The same kind as before. The cord still cut. I didn't touch it. I just stared at it, feeling my skin crawl, every nerve screaming that something was wrong. Then I heard it, a soft, low voice from behind me, so close I could feel the breath against my ear. Don't go outside. I spun around. No one there, just the shadows shifting along the wall, as if something had just moved past them. I looked back at the phone. It was gone, just a faint mark of dust where it had been sitting. That was 3 nights ago. Since then, I've stopped answering the phone altogether. I unplugged everything in the house, but sometimes, late at night, I still hear it ring, faintly, from somewhere that isn't here. The silence afterward is worse than the ringing, because that's when I feel again that same pull in the air, that same weight behind me, like someone's there, listening, waiting. And when I close my eyes, I swear I can still hear her. The whisper that started it all. He's already here. It started with a call like any other. Routine, quiet, harmless. I remember it was just past 9 in the morning. The sun barely cutting through the gray clouds that hung over Brookhaven. The town had this habit of looking tired, like the buildings themselves hadn't slept in years. I just sat down with my coffee when dispatch called through. Unit 12. We got a possible missing person over on Ashgrove Lane. Neighbors reporting someone hasn't been seen for a few days. I sighed, took a sip, and grabbed my notepad. Missing persons in this town usually meant someone packed up and left without telling anyone. It happened a lot. Brookhaven wasn't a place people stayed for long. I radioed back. Copy that, dispatch. I'll check it out. The drive over was quiet. Too quiet. Even the birds had gone still. Ashgrove Lane was one of those old neighborhoods that looked like time had forgotten it. Paint peeling off porches, mailboxes leaning sideways, the air thick with the smell of damp wood and rust. The caller met me outside her fence. Middle-aged woman, bathrobe still tied loose, eyes wide with worry. Her name was Mrs. Duval. I remember because she kept saying it, like she didn't want to forget. "It's my neighbor," she said, wringing her hands. "Tom Weaver. He lives next door. I haven't seen him since Thursday." It was Monday. I nodded. Did he mention going anywhere? Family out of town. She shook her head. No, that's the thing. He doesn't go anywhere. Just sits on his porch every evening with that little radio of his. But lately it's been quiet. The light in his kitchen's been on since Friday night. I thought he fell asleep with it. But now I think something's wrong. Her voice cracked on that last part. I looked toward Tom's house. Small, single story. Paint faded to a ghostly blue. Curtains drawn tight. The light she mentioned flickered faintly through the window. "All right, ma'am," I said softly. "I'll go take a look." As I walked up the path, the gravel crunched under my boots. The front yard was overgrown, grass pushing up through cracks in the walkway. There was an old tricycle half buried in weeds, though Tom never had kids. I knocked on the door. "Mr. Weaver, this is Officer Miller with Brookhaven PD. You home?" No answer. I knocked again, harder. "Mr. Weaver?" Still nothing. I glanced back toward Mrs. Duval. She was hugging herself now, standing on the porch like she was afraid to move closer. "Did you try calling him?" I asked. "His phone just rings," she said. "He never answers." I took a step toward the window and peered through a slit in the curtains. Inside, the kitchen was a mess. Plates stacked high in the sink. A half-eaten meal on the table. The chair was pushed back like someone had stood up suddenly. The light above the table flickered weakly, casting shadows that moved across the wall like slow waves. Something about it made my chest tighten. I tried the doorknob. Locked. "Dispatch," I said into my radio. "This is Unit 12. Possible welfare check at 45 Ashgrove Lane." No response. I may need to make entry. There was a pause, then static. "Copy that, Unit 12. Proceed as needed." I circled around to the back door. It was unlocked. The moment I pushed it open, The smell hit me. Not decay exactly, but something close. Stale air, sour and heavy. I stepped inside. The house was dim, curtains drawn everywhere. My flashlight beam swept across the floor, catching dust motes that floated like tiny ghosts. "Mr. Weaver?" I called out. Nothing. The kitchen looked worse up close. Food left out, coffee mug half full. Spoon still inside it. The radio sat on the counter, silent but plugged in. I moved toward the hallway, heart thudding in my chest. The air grew colder there, noticeably colder. There were photographs on the wall, old black and whites. A young Tom, maybe in his 30s, smiling next to a woman I assumed was his wife. But the later photos were different. Each one was just him, alone. And in the last photo, he wasn't smiling anymore. I called again. "Tom." Something creaked from the back room. I froze. The sound was faint, like a floorboard shifting under weight. I moved toward it slowly, flashlight trembling slightly in my grip. "Mr. Weaver, this is Officer Miller. Just here to check on you." No response. The hallway ended in a closed door. The sound had come from behind it. I reached for the knob, but before I could touch it, the radio in the kitchen crackled to life behind me. Just static. Loud, harsh static. I turned, heart pounding. The radio's red light flickered erratically. I stepped back toward the kitchen and turned it off. When I looked back toward the hallway, the door was open. I hadn't heard it move. I swear I didn't. Inside, the room was dark. My flashlight swept across a small bed. Sheets tangled, a dresser with the drawers half open. Papers were scattered everywhere. Old mail, bills, envelopes covered in handwriting. And in the middle of the room, sitting upright in the chair, was a coat. At least, I thought it was a coat at first. It was Tom's jacket, hanging from the chair, sleeves limp, but beneath it on the floor, boots, as if someone had been sitting there and just disappeared. The room was silent, so silent I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. On the wall behind the chair, someone had written a word, scratched into the plaster with something sharp. "Listen." I stepped closer, feeling my throat tighten. The letters were uneven, carved deep enough to flake off the paint. I checked the closet. Empty. Bathroom. Empty. Tom Weaver was gone. Completely. No sign of struggle. No broken glass. Nothing. But as I stood there, I started to notice something else. The stillness in that room wasn't normal. It was too still, like the air itself had been holding its breath. I backed away slowly, my chest tight, every hair on my arm standing on end. When I stepped into the hallway again, the photographs on the wall caught my eye. The last one, the one where Tom wasn't smiling, was crooked now. It hadn't been before. I fixed it out of habit, then froze when I saw the reflection in the glass. Behind me, in the kitchen doorway, something moved. A shape, just a shift of shadow, maybe a trick of the light. But I felt it, the same weight I'd felt before. That cold, silent pressure being watched. I turned fast, flashlight cutting through the empty room. Nothing, but the radio. The radio was on again. This time there was no static, just a voice. Soft, calm, don't go outside. My hand went numb. It wasn't the woman from before. It was a man this time, steady, almost patient. I stared at the radio, waiting for it to repeat, but it didn't, just silence. I stepped back, breathing hard. "Dispatch," I said into my radio. "I need a unit to 45 Ashgrove Lane. House is empty. Possible missing person confirmed." Static, then nothing. The radio on my shoulder hissed softly, same frequency as the one on the counter, like they were speaking the same language. I turned both off. When I finally stepped outside, the air felt wrong. Still but heavy, like something was standing just out of sight, watching. Mrs. Duval was still on her porch. "Did you find him?" she asked. I shook my head. "No, house is empty. We'll put in a report." She nodded slowly. "I told you something wasn't right. I could feel it." I looked back at the house one last time. The flickering kitchen light had gone completely dark. Later, when I wrote the report, I kept it simple. No signs of forced entry. No signs of foul play. Occupant missing. But I didn't mention the voice, or the word carved into the wall, or the feeling that someone was still in that house long after I left it, because I knew how it would sound. Crazy. Still that night, when I got home, I left every light in my house on, and when the phone rang at 2:13 a.m., I didn't answer it. I went back to Tom Weaver's house the next morning. Couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that word again, listen, scratched into the wall. It wasn't just a word that bothered me. It was the way the paint curled around it, like it had been written a long time ago, before the dust settled over it again. I told myself I'd miss something. Something small, logical. I'm a cop, not a ghost hunter. But even as I parked outside, I already knew I was lying to myself. Ash Grove Lane looked emptier than before. The sky was pale, sun hidden behind clouds that stretched like bruises. Mrs. Duval wasn't outside this time. Not even her curtains were moving. I stood there for a minute, engine running, just staring at the house. Same blue paint, same overgrown yard, same flickering kitchen light. Though I could have sworn I'd turned it off yesterday. It shouldn't have been on. I finally got out and shut the car door softly, like I didn't want to wake something. The air smelled damp and metallic. I went up to the front door again and tried the knob. Still locked. That's when I noticed the keyhole. It looked warped, like someone had melted the metal and let it harden again. The door itself had tiny scratches along the frame, inside scratches, as if someone had been clawing at it from the other side. My chest tightened. I knocked, even though I already knew there wouldn't be an answer. Tom, it's Officer Miller again. Nothing, just that slow hum of silence. I tried the back door next, the one that had been unlocked yesterday. This time it wouldn't budge. I twisted the handle, pushed with my shoulder, even tried lifting it like maybe the hinges were stuck. Nothing. It felt like someone had welded it shut. I took a few steps back, looking around the yard. Every window I could see was sealed tight, curtains drawn. I tapped on the glass of one near the kitchen, but it didn't even shake. That's when I realized there wasn't any reflection. The window pane was clean enough that I should have seen myself. But all I saw was gray, a flat, dull gray, like the house was swallowing the light instead of reflecting it. I called it in. At least I tried to. Dispatch, this is Unit 12. I'm back at Ash Grove Lane. I need to request a static. I adjusted the mic, tapped the side of it, but all I got was that same faint hiss, like breath over phone line. And then, under the static, I heard it, a whisper, just a few words, quiet, almost lost in the noise. Don't let it out. The sound was gone before I could process it. My blood ran cold. I turned off the radio, told myself it was interference, but the word stuck to me like a smell I couldn't wash off. I went back to the front door, crouched down, and peered through the mail slot. It was dark inside, but I could see just enough the edge of the hallway, the table with the old radio still on it. The red light was blinking. Slow, steady. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my small flashlight, and tried to angle the beam through the slot. That's when the beam hit something, right at eye level. A pair of boots, facing the door, standing just a few feet away. I jerked back instinctively, heart pounding. My first thought was that Tom was in there. Maybe he'd been hiding yesterday. Maybe he was just scared or sick. I leaned forward again, tried to look closer. But the space beyond the mail slot was black now. Empty. The boots were gone. I straightened up fast, every muscle tight. All right, I muttered to myself. We're not doing this. I went to the cruiser, grabbed my crowbar, and headed back. If the man was hurt, I wasn't about to waste time. The first hit cracked the doorframe. The second one splintered the latch. The third, the crowbar slipped. It felt like something inside had pushed back. Not resistance from the wood. No, it was like someone had braced themselves on the other side, pushing against me. I stepped back, breathing hard. The door stood there, slightly dented, not broken. That's when I heard it. A low, dull creak from somewhere inside, followed by a soft click, like a lock turning. Then another, and another. Every door in that house, one by one, was locking itself. I stood frozen on the porch as the sound traveled through the walls, like a chain reaction. Each lock clicking shut in slow, steady rhythm, front to back, top to bottom, until there was silence again, and the house just stared back at me. My hands were shaking. I don't even remember deciding to move, but I found myself circling to the far side of the house. I wanted to find an open window, any sign of life. The side yard was overgrown. I had to push through thorny vines to reach the back windows. My sleeve got snagged toward the elbow. When I reached the far wall, I stopped, because the window I'd looked through yesterday, the one into the bedroom, was wide open. The curtain flapped slightly, though there wasn't any wind. I hesitated for a long moment, then pulled myself through. Inside smelled like old dust and mildew. The floorboards creaked under my boots. The radio was still on in the kitchen, its red light glowing faintly through the hallway. I could hear faint static again, like breathing through a phone. I called out, quietly this time, "Tom, it's Officer Miller. You in here?" No response, but I heard footsteps upstairs. Slow, deliberate. I hadn't noticed the staircase before. I turned the corner, and there it was, a narrow set of stairs tucked behind the kitchen door. The steps were worn down the middle, like they'd been used often. I started up. Each step groaned under my weight. Halfway up, I paused. There was a faint mark on the wall beside me, like someone had dragged their fingertips through the dust, leaving 5 dark lines that ran all the way up. When I reached the top, the hallway stretched left and right, lined with closed doors. Every single one had a lock, and every single one was turned shut. The air up there was colder, heavy. I could see my breath, faint and white. Something about that hallway felt wrong. The proportions weren't right. The ceiling too low, the floorboards too narrow. It felt like walking through a house that didn't want me in it. I tried the first door. Locked. The second. Locked. The third one rattled slightly, as if something behind it shifted when I touched the handle. I froze. "Tom." No sound. Then a whisper, right behind the door. "Help me?" It was his voice. I knew it. Gravelly, tired, human. "Tom, it's Officer Miller." Step back from the door. I slammed my shoulder into it. Once, twice, on the third hit. The door cracked open an inch, then slammed shut on its own, hard enough to shake the wall. The voice on the other side changed. It wasn't a plea anymore. It was a laugh. Soft, wet, slow. Something in my chest turned cold. I backed away, breathing hard. My flashlight flickered once, twice, then went dark. For a second, the only light came from the red glow of the radio downstairs, faint but visible through the crack at the bottom of the stairwell. Then footsteps from inside one of the rooms. Then another set, and another. It sounded like someone was walking from room to room behind those locked doors, dragging their hand along the walls as they moved. I didn't wait to see where it stopped. I went back down the stairs fast, nearly tripping on the last step. When I reached the kitchen, the radio clicked off. The silence that followed was so complete it hurt my ears. I grabbed the back door handle again. It was still locked tight. I pulled, pushed, kicked, nothing worked. And then, slowly, the front door creaked open by itself. It didn't swing wide, just enough for me to leave. I didn't think. I ran through it and didn't stop until I was halfway across the street. When I turned back, the house was still. Every curtain was drawn. The light in the kitchen blinked once more and then went out for good. I called it in again. This time, the radio worked. My voice shook as I told dispatch I'd found the house sealed, an unsafer entry. But I didn't mention the voice, or the laughter, or how the doors locked themselves, because I knew no one would believe me. That night, as I sat in my patrol car outside the station, I looked down at my sleeve, the one that had torn on the vines. There were 5 dark marks across my arm, faint but there, like something had grabbed me, and for the first time in my career, I thought about quitting, because I realized something I hadn't before. Tom Weaver didn't leave. That house kept him, and now it knew my name. I didn't plan to go back to that house, but 2 nights later, I did. It wasn't duty that drove me. It was a sound, that faint whisper I kept hearing to the radio, even when it was turned off, a hiss under my breathing, quiet enough that I could almost ignore it. Almost. Every time I tried to sleep, it came back like someone talking through a wall. Muffled, patient. I told myself it was just the stress, but when it followed me into a patrol car, when I heard it whisper from the speaker itself, even with the volume knob turned all the way down, I knew it wasn't just in my head. The whisper said my name, clear as day. Miller. Just that one word. Then silence. By morning, I couldn't take it anymore. I told dispatch I was following up on the Weaver case. They didn't question it, just told me to file the report when I got back. The drive to Ashgrove Lane was quiet. The streets looked the same, bare trees, frost gathering along the edges of mailboxes, air so still it felt like the world was holding its breath. But when I turned onto the lane, I noticed something new. Every house around Tom's place was dark. Not just dark, empty, mail piled up on porches. Lawns uncut, cars untouched, frost covering the windshields. It was like the whole street had just stopped. Tom's house at the very end, quiet as always. Curtains still drawn tight. That same faint tilt in the roofline, the kind of imperfection that made your eyes linger longer than you wanted to. I parked and sat there for a long time, engine humming softly. The radio was off, but the whisper came through anyway. Miller. It breathed again, almost gentle. Listen. I stepped out. The air was colder here, unnaturally cold. My breath came out thick and heavy. Hanging in front of me, the front door was still slightly cracked open from last time. I thought about calling backup, but something in me resisted. I didn't want anyone else in there. I didn't want anyone else hearing what I'd been hearing. I crossed the yard and pushed the door open. The smell hit me first. Stale dust and something faintly metallic, like rust or old blood. Inside, the house looked the same, but it felt different, heavier. The kitchen light was off this time, and the air was filled with that low hum again, the same faint frequency I'd heard through the radio. I followed it, down the hallway, past the scratched walls and the toppled chair. The hum grew clearer the deeper I went, like it was pulling me toward something. When I reached the living room, I realized what it was. The radio. It was on again, though I'd seen it unplugged before. The red light blinked in slow rhythm. I walked closer, crouched down and listened. For a while, it was just static, but then, under it, I heard voices. Not one, several, whispering over each other, like they were all trying to speak at once. I couldn't make out the words at first. Then one voice rose above the rest, a woman's. "He's standing in the doorway," she said softly. I froze. The static wavered. Then another voice, a man's, older, tired. "He doesn't know what he's seeing." I turned my head slowly toward the doorway. Nothing, just empty air. But I felt it then, the same cold draft I felt the last time, crawling along my neck. I turned back to the radio. "Who is this?" I said, my voice quieter than I meant it to be. No answer. The static hissed. Then the woman's voice returned. "He thinks he's alone." That's when I noticed a reflection. On the dark screen of the TV across the room. My reflection standing there, staring at the radio. Except it wasn't my reflection. The figure in the glass was facing me. I spun around. Nothing. Just the faint sound of a door closing somewhere upstairs. I told myself it was the wind. Even though there wasn't any, I needed air. I stepped back into the hallway. The whisper followed me. It wasn't coming from the radio anymore. It was in the walls. Muffled voices, seeping through the wood. "Tom Weaver," one of them said. Then another, "You shouldn't have come back." I pressed my ear against the plaster. The sound grew clearer. It was like someone was on the other side, whispering right into the wall. I took a few steps down the hall, following the voice. It moved with me, like it was walking just beyond the barrier. Then I reached the end of the hallway, where the basement door stood slightly ajar. The whispering stopped. Only the creak of the hinges remained. Every instinct told me not to open it, but the silence on the other side was worse than the voices had been. I pushed it open. The smell hit harder this time, damp, earthy, and old. The kind of smell you get in crawl spaces that haven't seen light in decades. I shone my flashlight down the stairs. The beam caught the edge of concrete pipes and a single wooden chair in the middle of the basement floor. Something was sitting on it. At first, I thought it was a mannequin. The posture was too still. The head hung forward, arms loose at the sides. But then the fingers twitched, and I realized it was a man. I took one cautious step down. Tom. The figure didn't move. Another step. When my boot touched the concrete, the basement lights flickered on. Fluorescent. Harsh. The chair was empty. The figure was gone. And now the whispers were everywhere, coming from the walls, the ceiling, even the pipes. Dozens of voices, all overlapping, fast, desperate, whispering fragments of sentences. He saw us. Don't let him out. He doesn't belong here. I covered my ears, but it didn't stop. The sound wasn't external anymore. It was inside my head. Miller, one of them hissed. A child's voice. Clothes. I looked up. There were handprints on the ceiling. Small ones. Dozens of them. Pressed into the concrete like clay. Each one was moving slightly, like something behind the wall was pressing outward. I stumbled back, my flashlight slipping from my hand and clattering across the floor. The voices surged, louder now, forming words. He left us here. He locked the doors. He's still upstairs. I ran. I didn't think, didn't breathe, just ran up the stairs and back into the hallway. The front door was shut again. Locked. I twisted the knob, shoved my shoulder against it, but it wouldn't move. Behind me, the whispers followed, crawling up the walls like rising water. I turned and shouted, "What do you want from me?" For a moment, everything stopped. Then, from the far end of the hallway, a single voice answered. It wasn't whispering this time. It was clear, calm. "We want you to listen." My throat went dry. The word echoed through the house, vibrating in the walls. That same word, the one I'd found carved into the plaster days ago. Listen, then silence. I stood there, barely breathing. The air felt thick, pressing against my chest. The sound returned again, faint and rhythmic. Not a voice this time. Footsteps, coming down the stairs. I didn't wait to see what it was. I threw my weight against the door again, and this time it gave way, just enough for me to slip through. Cold air hit me as I stumbled into the yard. The whisper cut off instantly, like a radio switched off. I turned back. The house stood there, still as ever. No movement, no sound, but I could feel it. Eyes watching from behind those drawn curtains. I backed toward the car, fumbling for my keys. My hands were shaking so bad, I dropped them twice. When I finally got the door open and sat inside, I didn't start the engine right away. I just stared at the house through the windshield. Then the radio came to life. Static filled the car, thick and harsh. I reached the knob to turn it off, but the voice came through again, clear, calm, and cold. He's still inside. I froze. Then another voice joined it, softer. The woman again. Don't let him leave. The radio crackled, and through the static, I heard it. Footsteps. From the back seat, I turned slowly, my heart thundering in my chest. Nothing, just the empty seat and my jacket hanging over it. But I swear, just before I looked, I felt the warmth of breath against my ear, and it whispered one last word. Listen. It had been 3 nights since the last time I went into that house. 3 nights since I heard the voices. Since something whispered my name from the dark. I didn't tell anyone what happened. What could I even say? That the walls spoke? That I heard children's hands pressing from inside the ceiling? No, they'd think I'd lost it. And maybe I had. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. About the way that word, listen, echoed through my head long after I left. Every sound I heard afterward felt wrong. The ticking of the clock in the station. The hum of the vending machine. The whisper of air through the vents. All of it sounded like words. Like someone would still try to talk to me. By the 4th night, I couldn't ignore it anymore. I drove out to Ashgrove Lane again. The street was darker this time. No streetlights, no porch lamps. Just my headlights carving thin paths of white through the mist that had rolled in from the fields. The fog was thick enough that it swallowed everything beyond 20 feet. It was like the world ended right outside the car. When I reached the Weaver place, I kept the engine running. I didn't want to get out, but the radio made that choice for me. Static burst from the speaker, sharp and sudden. Then my voice. Playback. Tom, it's Officer Miller. You in here? My own words. The ones I said inside that house. I froze, staring at the dash. The sound kept looping. Same tone, same breath, same pause. Tom, it's Officer Miller. You in here? I yanked the radio plug out of the socket. The voice stopped immediately. Silence. Then something shifted in the fog outside. At first, I thought it was just mist catching the light. But the longer I stared, the more certain I became that there was something there, standing near the tree line behind the house. A figure, still, watching. It wasn't close enough for me to make out details. Just a vague shape, tall, unmoving, its outline rippling slightly through the fog. I turned off the engine and stepped out. The cold hit me like a slap. The night was so quiet it felt like sound had frozen too. Even my own footsteps on the gravel seemed muffled. Hey! I called out, my voice breaking the stillness. Police, you need to identify yourself. No movement. The shape stayed exactly where it was. I started walking toward it, one hand near my holster, not out of threat, but comfort. It grounded me, reminded me what was real. As I got closer, I realized something strange. The fog around the figure wasn't moving. Everywhere else it drifted and curled, but not there. Around that shape, it was perfectly still. I stopped about 10 feet away. My flashlight beam cut through the mist, but it didn't touch the figure. The light seemed to bend around it, like it didn't want to reveal it. Then, as I took another cautious step, the figure moved. Not forward, not backward. It just shifted, like it had turned its head. That's when I saw the eyes. Or maybe not eyes, just two faint points of dull reflection, like glass catching the faintest bit of light. And in that single second, I knew something for certain. Whatever I was looking at wasn't Tom Weaver. I called out again, louder this time. This is the police. Don't move. It didn't. I took another step forward, boots crunching against dead grass, and the figure took one step back, exactly the same distance. My mouth went dry. We stood there, me and it, mirroring each other in that suffocating fog. Then it started to sink, slowly, like it was melting into the ground. I took off running. When I reached where it had been standing, the fog parted for just a second, just enough to show me that the grass was flattened in a perfect circle. No footprints, no drag marks, just a dark, sunken patch of earth that looked burned, but cold to the touch when I crouched down. That's when the wind picked up. A sudden gust tore through the trees, and for a brief moment I heard again those whispers, faint, scattered, like the fog itself was breathing words. Miller, you shouldn't have come back. It's still watching. The wind died as quickly as it started. I stood there, heart pounding, staring at the house. Its silhouette loomed through the fog, quiet and patient. Something about it looked different now. The windows, they weren't just dark, they were black, like voids cut into the shape of a house. And then, one by one, they started to glow. A faint red light pulsing behind each curtain. Slow, rhythmic, like a heartbeat. I backed away, step by step, until I reached the fence at the edge of the property. I didn't remember there being a fence before. When I turned to look for the car, I couldn't see it. The fog had thickened so much that the world beyond the house was gone. Just that red glow pulsing through the windows, and the faint sound of static in the distance. I forced myself to move, fast. I followed the gravel path by memory, counting my steps until I hit metal. The car. I got in, slammed the door, started the engine. Nothing. The key turned, but the motor didn't catch. I tried again, and again, still nothing. Then, in the rear view mirror, I saw it, the figure, standing behind the car. Closer now. Its outline was sharper, more defined in the glow from the brake lights. It was tall, shoulders slightly hunched, its head tilted at an angle that looked wrong, like it was listening to something I couldn't hear. I didn't move, didn't breathe. The fog outside the windshield swirled slowly, parting for a moment just enough for me to see its hands. They were long, too long, hanging just past the knees. The figure didn't move toward me. It just stood there like it was waiting for something. Then, my radio crackled again, that same whispering static, and beneath it, my voice. But this time, the recording wasn't from the house. It was from right now. Every word I was saying, every shaky breath, playing back in perfect sync. I stared at the radio, and for a moment I thought I saw movement behind the speaker grill. Something shifting inside, like the sound itself was alive. I reached for radio to shut off, but before I could touch it, the headlights flickered on. The beam cut through the fog and illuminated the backyard fence. And standing beyond it were dozens of shapes, all motionless, all facing the car, each one faint, half visible, like shadows stretched into human form. My breath caught in my throat. I blinked once, and they were gone. The fog rolled back in like a wave, swallowing everything. I finally got the engine to start, slammed the gear into reverse, and tore down a lane as fast as I could. The moment I cleared the edge of the fog, the radio went dead. The lights on the dash flickered once, then stabilized. Everything looked normal again. But the moment I looked into the side mirror, I saw it, a shadow moving along the road behind me, keeping pace with the cruiser, no matter how fast I drove. It wasn't running. It wasn't walking. It was gliding. I didn't stop driving until I hit the highway. Even then, I didn't look back again. When I reached the station, the night clerk asked if I was okay. Said I looked pale. I told him I was fine, just tired. He mentioned something then, something that made my stomach twist. He said dispatch had been hearing my voice over the radio all evening, even though I hadn't said a word. He played it for me. The recording was faint, buried in static, but I knew the words before I even heard them, because they weren't mine. They were the same ones from the house, the same ones whispered through the walls. He's still watching. He's in the yard. The clerk asked if that meant anything to me. I said no, but I couldn't stop thinking about that patch of ground, the one where the grass was burned black. Because when I got home that night, when I pulled into my driveway and stepped out of the car, there was the faint smell of burnt earth in the air, and on my lawn, in the light from my porch, the grass was bent in the shape of a perfect circle, just like the one in Tom Weaver's yard. And for a long time, I just stood there staring at it, because deep down I already knew whatever I'd seen out there hadn't stayed behind. It followed me home. It was a little past 2 in the morning when the call came through, a 9/11 report. Strange noises at the old playground on Elm Street. Dispatch said the caller didn't give a name, just hung up after whispering, "They're still out there." It sounded like another prank. We've been getting those a lot lately. Teenagers, mostly, testing how far they could push before we showed up. Still, procedure. So I went. The night was colder than usual. A thin mist rolled along the streets, glowing faintly under the orange streetlights. The kind of quiet that made every sound feel louder than it should. As I drove, I kept thinking about how many times I'd passed that playground growing up. It was different back then. Kids everywhere, parents on the benches, the sound of swings cutting through the air. Now it was nothing but rust and silence. The place had been closed for years after an accident. A boy fell from the jungle gym one evening and didn't get up. No one really talked about it afterward. The town just let it fade. But every now and then, someone would call it in. Said they heard children laughing out there. I turned onto Elm and parked just past the old fence. The headlights cut through the mist and landed on the swings. They were moving. Not much, just a slow, gentle sway. Back and forth. There was no wind. I got out of the cruiser. Radio dispatch. Unit 4 responding to 9/11. Call at Elm Street Playground. No visible persons on site. They acknowledged. Told me to check the area and report back. My boots crunched against the gravel path as I stepped inside. The chain link gate hung half open, the hinges squealing softly when I brushed past. That sound echoed. Too loud, too sharp for how quiet the world was around it. The first thing I noticed was the smell. Damp earth, rust, and something else. Something faintly sweet, like rotting fruit. I played my flashlight across the field. The grass had grown high, bending under the weight of dew. The slide was caked with grime. The seesaw sat lopsided, one end buried halfway in the ground. Everything looked still, but that's when I heard it. A soft clink, like metal tapping metal. It came from near the swings. I swept the flashlight in that direction, and for a second I thought I saw a movement, a shape shifting just out of the beam's reach. "Hello," I called out. "This is the police. If someone's there, step into the light." Silence. I waited, listening. Then came another sound, this one quieter, closer, a low, dragging scrape, like someone's shoe sliding through wet sand. The beam of my flashlight shook slightly as I turned. Nothing but fog and shadows. But I could feel it, that subtle, electric weight of being watched. I took a slow breath. "All right, let's not play games tonight. Just show yourself." Something creaked. I turned again, this time toward the merry-go-round. It was moving, barely spinning, like someone had given it the lightest push. I stepped closer, shining the light on it. Empty, no footprints in the dirt, no sign of anyone hiding nearby. Still, it kept spinning. My radio crackled suddenly, the static sharp enough to make me flinch. "Unit 4, status check." I pressed the button, still investigating. "No contact yet." "Copy that. Be advised, caller's number traced to an address near your location." "Near?" I asked. "How near?" "Same street. House number 107. Caller hung up mid-transmission. 107 Elm. That was just across from the playground." I looked up, and sure enough, through the fog, I could make out the faint outline of a two-story house. No lights, no sign of life. I decided to check it out before heading back. As I turned toward the gate, I noticed something strange. The swings had stopped moving, every single one, completely still. It shouldn't have unnerved me as much as it did, but somehow it did. The kind of stillness that doesn't feel like peace. It feels like something holding its breath. I pushed through the gate, walked toward the house. The streetlights behind me flickered once, then went dark. I told myself it was just the wiring, but the timing felt wrong. When I reached the porch, I could see that the front door was slightly open. Not enough to enter, but enough to notice. "Police?" I called out. "Is anyone home?" No answer. I took a cautious step forward, the wood creaking under my boots. The door opened a little more, slow and uneven, like it didn't want to. Inside, it was pitch black. The smell of dust hit me immediately. Dust and something damp. "Hello?" Still nothing. I shone my light around the small entryway. Furniture draped in sheets. A hallway leading deeper inside. I took one step in, and the front door slammed behind me. The sound exploded in the dark, echoing through the house. I spun around, grabbed the knob. It was locked from the inside. I tried again, harder. Nothing. Great. I muttered, exhaling hard. Then the floor creaked behind me. It wasn't loud, but it was close. Slow. Measured. Like footsteps. I turned, shining the flashlight down the hallway. The beam landed on a doorway. Something moved past it. A blur. "Police!" I yelled. "Who's there?" No response. Just a faint whisper of air, like someone had exhaled right next to my ear. My pulse quickened. The flashlight trembled in my hand. I took a step closer to the hall, trying to keep my voice steady. "Listen, whoever you are, I just want to make sure everything's all right." Then I heard it again. That same clink sound from the playground. Metal tapping metal. It came from inside the house now. I followed it, my light cutting through the dark, until I reached what looked like a living room. The source of the sound was in the corner. A child's swing set. Indoors. The kind you'd find in a backyard. Old and rusted. It creaked as it swayed gently back and forth. Even though there was no wind, the chains rattled softly with each motion. And sitting on the swing was a doll, its head tilted to one side, the eyes dull and gray. I don't know why I went closer. Curiosity, maybe, habit, whatever it was, it pushed me forward. The floorboards groaned under me as I crouched near it. The doll's face was cracked, paint peeling, mouth open just enough to show a small gap where teeth might have been painted once. Then, from somewhere above, came the sound of a door closing. Slowly, deliberately. I stood up fast, flashlight aimed at the ceiling. Another door creaked open, then shut, then open again. like someone walking through the rooms upstairs. But every time a door closed, the swing behind me creaked louder. The sound synced. Door, swing, door, swing, back and forth, back and forth. I felt something in my stomach drop, an instinct I couldn't explain, the same kind that makes animals freeze before an earthquake. I backed away, keeping the light on the ceiling. The footsteps stopped. Silence. Then a voice. Faint, small, like a child whispering through a vent. Push me. I froze. Push me. It came again, closer this time. I turned, the flashlight beam sweeping the room. The doll was gone. The swing was still moving. And from behind me, the sound of small footsteps running down the hall. I didn't look. I just ran. When I reached the front door, it opened on its own. I stumbled out, gasping back into the cold night air. The fog had thinned, the first hint of dawn bleeding through clouds. The street was empty. I turned back toward the house and froze. In the upstairs window, I could see a shape. Small, pale, watching me. The curtain fluttered slightly, even though the air was still. I didn't wait. I radioed dispatch, told them the area was clear, no suspect found. I didn't mention the voice, or the swing, or the doll. They wouldn't believe me anyway. But later, when I drove past the playground one last time, I saw something that made my stomach twist. The swings were moving again, only this time there were 3 of them, and one was still swaying long after the others had stopped. I told myself I wasn't scared. I've been on dozens of calls like that before, noise complaints, false alarms, kids messing around. That's what I kept repeating in my head as I stood in the empty playground. Flashlight beam cutting through the fog. But something about that place didn't feel right. After that first night, after the call from the unknown number and the whisper that ended mid-sentence, I thought maybe I'd imagined it. Maybe I was tired. But the next night, I got another call. Same time, same place. And again, the voice was barely more than a breath. They're still out there. Then the line went dead. I drove out alone. No backup this time. I told dispatch it was just a quick check. I didn't want anyone else wasting their time on ghost stories. When I reached the playground, the fog was thicker than before. The air was wet, heavy, like walking through someone's breath. The street lights didn't reach that far. The only light came from the faint glow of my cruiser behind me, and the beam of my flashlight swaying with each step. The swings were there again, still as stone. And then, like something out of a bad dream, one of them started to move. Not much, just a slow back and forth sway. I stopped walking. There was no wind, not even a whisper. The trees around the park were motionless, every branch frozen. But that swing, it kept moving. The chain groaned softly with each pass. Back and forth. I aimed the flashlight directly at it, waiting for the wind to show itself. Leaves rustling, grass bending, anything. But the air was completely still. That's when the second swing started to move. It jerked slightly first, like someone had just pushed off from it, then began to match the first. Same rhythm, same speed. I felt the hair on my arms rise. Hello. I called out. My voice cracked a little. This is Officer Miller. If someone's here, you need to come out. The playground answered with silence. The seesaw at the far end creaked. Slowly one side dipped down. Then the other, like invisible hands, were taking turns. The sound was faint but sharp enough to cut through the mist. I scanned the area with my light, expecting to see movement. Someone hiding behind the slide or crouched behind a jungle gym. But there was nothing, just the fog, and the sound of metal moving on its own. I don't know why I didn't just leave right then. Maybe pride, maybe curiosity, or maybe because I needed to prove to myself that it wasn't what it looked like. I moved closer. My flashlight beam slid across the swing set, the seesaw, the slide. That's when I noticed something odd. The ground beneath the swings. The dirt wasn't just disturbed. It was pressed down like something had been sitting there. 2 deep, uneven impressions, almost like feet. But they were small, child-sized. I felt my throat go dry. The air grew colder the closer I got, like I'd stepped into a pocket of ice. My breath fogged in front of me. I reached out and grabbed one of the swing chains, stopping it mid-motion. The metal was freezing. I held it still for a second, then let go. It stayed still. For a moment, I almost laughed at myself. I was scaring myself over nothing. But then the other swing started to move again, harder this time. The chain rattled as it went higher, faster, until the seat slapped against the pole with a dull clack. That sound echoed to the fog, bouncing off the houses down the street. I stumbled back, flashlight shaking in my hand. Then, all at once, everything stopped. The swings hung dead still. The seesaw went flat. Even the creaking slide went silent. It was like the air itself froze. And in that silence, I heard it, a soft, low whisper coming from behind me. At first, I thought it was the wind finally catching up, but when I turned, I saw the source. The slide. Something was whispering from inside the tunnel slide. I took a few careful steps toward it, the sound growing clearer as I got closer. It wasn't just whispering, it was talking, but the words didn't make sense. They were broken, muffled, like a voice trying to push through water. I crouched down near the base of the slide, flashlight aimed at the tunnel. Empty. "Hello," I said quietly. "If someone's in there, come out." Nothing, just the faint hiss of breath. Then, slowly, the whispering stopped, and the slide began to move. It tilted just slightly, then trembled, like something heavy had just shifted inside it. I stepped back fast, my heart pounding against my ribs. Then came a sound I'll never forget. The sound of small hands sliding down the plastic. Fast, but when I raised my light, nothing came out, just empty space. The air felt wrong. Thicker, charged, like the static that builds up before a storm. That's when I noticed something new. Footprints, leading away from the slide. Small, bare footprints in the dirt. Wet, fresh. They went straight toward the swings and stopped right under the one I touched. I followed them with the light, then froze when I saw something glinting on the ground beside them. A silver ring, small, bent out of shape, like it had been crushed under weight. When I crouched to pick it up, I noticed an engraving inside. 2 letters, T.W., Tom Weaver, the missing man, the same one from a call on Ash Grove Lane a few nights earlier. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. What the hell was his ring doing here? I stood up, gripping it tight. "Dispatch," I said into my radio. My voice shook. "This is Unit 12. I'm at the Elm Street playground. I found something belonging to a missing person, requesting backup." Static. "Dispatch copy." More static. Then, faintly, "Don't stay there." The voice wasn't dispatch. It was a whisper, the same one I'd heard inside the slide. I dropped the radio. It hit the ground with a thud, the static still hissing faintly from the speaker. And then, from behind me, I heard the swing move again, slowly this time. Creak, creak, creak. I turned, light trembling in my hand. The swing was moving on its own again, but now there was something different about it. Each time it swung forward, it stopped for just a second, like it was hitting resistance, like it was brushing against something solid, something invisible. I backed away toward the gate, but the fog had thickened around the edges of the park. The path back to my cruiser was barely visible. I could still see the playground through the mist, the swing moving in that unnatural rhythm. And then, just for a heartbeat, I saw something sitting in it. A small shape, pale, still. I blinked and it was gone. The swing kept moving. I turned and walked fast toward the gate, trying not to run. Every instinct screamed at me to get out, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone out there. Every step I took, I could hear something behind me. Soft, slow, footsteps in the dirt. But when I turned around, the swings were still. Everything was quiet again. I didn't even realize I was gripping the ring so tightly until I got back to the cruiser and saw the imprint of it dug into my palm. I didn't report everything in the log that night, just area check, no visible disturbance. But when I got home, I set the ring on the kitchen table and stared at it for a long time. It was ice cold. The next morning, I looked up Tom Weaver's missing person file again. There was one thing I hadn't noticed before. His last known address wasn't Ash Grove Lane. That was where his neighbor had reported him missing from. But the address listed on his ID, the one printed in the report, was 104 Elm Street, the house directly across from the playground, the same one where the swing never stopped moving. I've worked night shift for years. I've seen drunks wandering half-naked in the rain, fights in parking lots, even kids testing courage in graveyards. But that night at the playground, it's the one I still hear when everything else is quiet. After the swing stopped moving, I told myself it was over. Maybe the chains had just been caught in the breeze. Maybe I was overtired. I tried to walk away, get back to my cruiser, log it as a false alarm. But halfway across the lot, something made me stop. It was the sound of gravel crunching. Not mine, someone else's. At first, it came soft, one slow, dragging step, then another, the kind of sound that feels heavier than it should, like whoever's walking doesn't care if you hear them or not. I turned around, shining my flashlight toward the swings again. Nothing moved, no one there, but the sound didn't stop. It shifted, came from somewhere near the slide. It was one of those tall metal slides, the kind that looks older than the rest of the playground. Rust around the bolts, the paint peeling off the ladder. I could see my breath foggy in the air as I walked toward it, my boots scraping the wet sand below. Every step I took made the night feel thicker. The sky was a flat, empty black. Even the wind had died, like it was waiting for something. Then I heard it, footsteps again. Only this time, they weren't on the gravel. They were on the slide itself. Clang, a hollow, metallic thud. Then another, like someone climbing up. I froze. My light caught the edge of the ladder, but no one was there. The air around me felt heavier, pressing it against my ears. I called out, my voice quieter than I meant it to be. Hello? This is Officer Clark. You need to come out if you're there. Silence. I waited a few seconds, then took a step closer. My boot brushed over something small and soft. It was a mitten, pink, with a little white rabbit stitched into the side. It looked fresh, like it had just fallen. That's when I heard it again. Footsteps, right above me this time. Quick, light, but spaced too far apart to be from a child. Thud, thud, then shook like something sliding down. My flashlight beam caught the metal surface just as it happened. No one was there, but the slide moved. It shuddered. A faint vibration ran through the frame, like someone had gone down it just seconds before I looked. The sand at the bottom even carried a mark, a smooth line, as if something heavy had passed through it. I knelt down, my heart beating fast. The air smelled faintly metallic, like rain on rust. I touched the mark. The sand was cold. Too cold. That's when I noticed something else. Footprints. They started right there at the base of the slide. Small, barefoot. The prints led across the sand, over the mulch, and stopped halfway to the swings. They didn't fade like normal prints. They just ended. No turn, no overlap. Like whoever made them had simply disappeared. I followed them anyway, my flashlight trembling a little in my hand. The world felt quiet, too quiet. Even my radio gave off a low hum, like static that didn't want to die. Halfway across the playground, I thought I saw something move at the edge of the trees. A pale shape just beyond the light. It wasn't running. It wasn't walking. It just shifted, like a reflection trying to stay still. I blinked, and it was gone. But then, from behind me, the slide creaked. Slow, long, like weight pressing against metal. The sound of something heavy climbing again. I turned, fast. My flashlight caught the top of the slide. The beam flickered, maybe from my hand shaking, maybe not. I couldn't tell anymore. That's when I saw it, just for a second, a shadow, human-shaped, crawling up the ladder backward. I didn't breathe, didn't move. I couldn't. My throat locked up like it didn't belong to me anymore. The thing, or whatever it was, reached the top of the slide and stopped. I could feel it watching me. I couldn't see its face, but I felt it. The way you feel someone staring through a window. That low, gut-deep awareness that you're not alone. Then the radio on my shoulder crackled. A burst of static, followed by a voice I didn't recognize. It whispered something, just a few words, but I heard them clear. Don't look away. I spun around, pressing the button to respond, but all I got was more static. When I turned back toward the slide, it was empty again, but the footprints had changed. There were more now. A second set, larger, uneven. They started with the small ones that ended, looping around the slide, stopping near the base of the monkey bars. Something about the pattern bothered me. The prints didn't line up right. The steps were too close together, like whoever or whatever made them have been dragging a leg. The hairs on my arms stood up. I backed away slowly, scanning the area. My light caught the reflection of the slide again, and this time I noticed something faint at the top. A handprint. It was small, smaller than my own palm, but it was fresh. The metal still gleamed where it pressed down, like the moisture hadn't yet dried. I whispered to myself, "No one's here, no one's here," but my voice didn't sound right. It sounded like someone else saying it through me. The radio crackled again. This time, the voice wasn't whispering. It was crying. A child, a little girl, over and over. She said, "He won't let me leave." I don't remember dropping the flashlight, but I must have, because everything went dark. The beam rolled across the sand, lighting up bits of ground as it spun. In that spinning light, I caught movement. Something darting behind the slide, fast. Too fast. I grabbed the light and ran toward it, yelling again, "Police!" Stop. But when I turned the corner, there was nothing, just the rusted frame of the slide. Empty, and yet I could still hear the footsteps. Not around me, above me, on the metal again, one after another, like something circling just out of reach. The sound bounced through the cold night air, echoing through the trees. Then silence. And in that silence, I heard breathing. Not mine, not steady. It came in short, ragged bursts from somewhere close. Too close. I aimed the light at the slide again. The air shimmered. For a heartbeat, I saw the faint outline of a figure crouched at the top, knees drawn up, head tilted to the side, like a child waiting for their turn to slide. I blinked, and it was gone. But in the sand below, new footprints had appeared. Right in front of me, 2 sets, side by side, facing me. I stepped back, gripping the flashlight, so hard my knuckles turned white. The prints didn't move, but I swear I saw them deepen, like weight was pressing down. The radio hissed once more. The voice, soft, almost pleading this time, "Don't let him out." And then everything went quiet. The wind picked up again, carrying a faint metallic sound. Chains clinking, a single swing moving back and forth in the distance. That was enough. I walked backward until I reached my cruiser. I didn't run, though every muscle in me screamed to. When I finally sat inside, doors locked, engine on, I stared at that playground through the windshield. The swings had stopped again. The slide was still. Nothing moved. But as I turned the radio in, my headlights caught something small lying in the sand near the slide. Another mitten, matching the first one. And this time, there were no footprints at all. By the time I got back to my cruiser, my hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold the keys. I told myself it was just the cold, but deep down I knew it wasn't. The night had gone too quiet again. The kind of quiet that doesn't feel peaceful, just empty. I sat there for a minute, staring through the windshield at the playground. The slide, the swings, the small roundabout in the corner, all of it looked still, normal, like it hadn't just scared the life out of me. I turned on the engine, but the sound didn't comfort me the way it usually does. It just felt too loud, too alive against the dead silence outside. I grabbed the radio, tried to check in with dispatch, but all I got was static, a low hiss that crawled into my ear like white noise. I tried again, this time calling another unit, just in case. Nothing. I sat back, staring at the dash clock. 2:46 a.m. I'd only been here 30 minutes. It felt like hours. I told myself I'd do one last sweep before leaving. Make sure no one was hiding. No kids wandering around. That was the job after all. Make sure everything was safe before I closed the call. I stepped out again. The air hit me like ice. My boots crunched softly over the gravel as I walked past the swings. The metal creaked just once when the wind brushed past. And then I heard it. A laugh. It was soft, high-pitched, the kind of sound a little kid makes when they're trying to stifle a giggle. It came from the direction of the slide. Every muscle in my body went still. The laugh came again, this time stretched longer, fading into something breathy, like an echo bouncing between the trees. I scanned the area with my flashlight. Nothing. The slide was empty, the sand undisturbed. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was crouched just beyond the light, watching. I called out, forcing my voice steady. "Hey, hello? Who's there?" Silence. Then, from behind me, another giggle. This one came from the swings. I spun around so fast, I nearly dropped my flashlight. The swings were moving again, just slightly, like someone had brushed against them while running past. I aimed a light across the playground, every corner, every shadow. My breath fogged in front of me. No movement, no figures, nothing but the faint hum of the highway in the distance. And then, the laugh again, this time closer, right behind me. It was so soft, I almost thought it came from inside my head. I turned slowly, shining the beam across the slide again. The metal gleamed, catching the light like something slick had brushed over it. I didn't see anyone, but I could feel someone there, like a presence leaning just over my shoulder, waiting for me to turn all the way around. I forced myself to speak. "This isn't funny. You need to come out, right now." Nothing, not even wind this time. Then something strange happened. The air around me changed. It felt heavier, like the pressure dropped all at once. The trees at the edge of the park started to sway even though there wasn't a breeze. And from the dark, faint, overlapping voices. Children, whispering, not words I could understand, just a soft jumble of sound. It started near the swings, then moved toward the roundabout, circling the playground like they were running, chasing each other. I couldn't see them, but I could hear them, the way of the laughter mixed with footsteps that weren't really there. Every instinct screamed at me to get in the car and drive away, but I didn't. I just stood there like an idiot, flashlight trembling, trying to convince myself there had to be a logical explanation. I whispered to myself, "Sound travels weird at night. That's all this is. Echoes." But then something cold brushed against the back of my hand. I jerked away, shining the light down. Nothing there. Still, my skin burned where it had touched me. The laughter got louder then. Not playful anymore, distorted, stretched thin, like it was coming from a recording being slowed down. I started backing toward the cruiser, one step at a time. My boots sank into the sand near the slide, and just as I passed it, something caught a handprint pressed into the metal surface. Small, too small for an adult. It hadn't been there before. I was sure of it. I stared at it for a long moment. The print looked wet, almost glowing faintly under my light. Then I heard another sound, something scraping across the sand. I turned. The roundabout was spinning. Not fast, not violently. Just a slow, steady turn, around and around. There was no wind, no one touching it, but it moved, creaking quietly with every rotation. And with each turn, I heard a faint giggle. Then two, then more. They layered together, overlapping in strange rhythms, like laughter played backward. My throat felt tight. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it echo through the silence. That's when I noticed something else. Footprints again, small ones, bare. They started near the slide, looped around the roundabout, and led straight toward the trees at the edge of the playground. I followed them, because that's what I was supposed to do. That's what training tells you to do. You investigate. You confirm. You don't let fear make the call. But the closer I got to the trees, the fainter the prints became, until they just stopped, right at the edge of the dirt, like whoever made them had walked straight into the dark and vanished. I turned back toward the playground, and that's when I saw movement. Something small darted between the swing sets, so fast I couldn't focus on it. I raised my flashlight again. Stop. Police. Nothing. The light caught the slide again, and I swear, for half a second, I saw a figure sitting at the top, knees bent, head tilted down. Then the light flickered and it was gone. The playground was empty again, completely still, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't over. that something was still watching from just outside the reach of the light. I backed away, step by step, until I reached my cruiser. My throat felt dry, my fingers numb. When I opened the door, the radio suddenly came to life. Just a burst of static at first, then a faint sound beneath it. Children laughing. That same laughter. It grew louder the longer I listened, until I had to turn the volume down. I pressed a button to respond, to say something, anything. But before I could, a small voice cut through the noise. "You found us." I froze. The voice was close now. Too close. It didn't sound like it came from the radio at all. It sounded like it came from right behind me. I turned, heart pounding, light sweeping across the back seat, empty. Just my gear, the back cage, and shadows stretching across the seats. Nothing else. But the laughter kept going. Softer now. Moving away. Out the window. Across the lot. Toward the trees again. I sat there for a while. Engine running. Staring out into the dark. I told myself it had to be echoes. Maybe kids hiding in the woods. Maybe something to do with acoustics. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. The air felt wrong. Too heavy. Too still. Like the night was holding its breath. When I finally put the car in drive, I glanced one last time toward the playground. The swings were still moving. Just slightly. Back and forth. Back and forth. And faintly, under the hum of the engine, I heard that same soft giggle again. It followed me all the way down the road. Even when the playground disappeared in the rearview mirror, I could still hear it, echoing in my head. By the time I reached the next streetlight, it started to fade. The laughter got weaker, like it was drifting away. But as it did, something else took its place. Footsteps, light, barefoot, running behind me. I glanced in the mirror again. Nothing there, but the sound didn't stop. It kept pace with the car for nearly half a mile, tapping against the pavement in rhythm with my heartbeat. Then, just as I reached the highway, silence, complete and final. I drove the rest of my shift with the radio off. Didn't respond to a single call until the sun came up. But that night, even after I went home, I could still hear faint laughter echoing in my head whenever the room got too quiet. And sometimes, if I listen close enough, I swear I still hear small footsteps outside my window. Running, playing, waiting. I still remember the night I got the call from Willow Street. It was late, past 2 in the morning. The kind of hour where everything feels heavier. Even the air. Dispatch said a woman had called 911, whispering that she heard someone screaming in a house across from hers. Said it sounded like a man, maybe 2. But here's the thing. According to the records, that house had been empty for months. Foreclosure. Family moved out after the father passed. I'd driven by it plenty of times. Faded curtains, broken fence. That sort of quiet decay that never feels natural. Still, a report to report. So I went. Willow Street sits on the edge of town, where the pavement starts to crack and the streetlights flicker like they're just barely hanging on. The kind of place you don't notice unless you already know it's there. As I turned onto block, I killed the siren. I didn't want to wake anyone else. Just the soft hum of the cruiser's engine and the buzz of the radio static kept me company. The caller's house was easy to find, a small one-story with a sagging porch. Across the street stood the empty house. 2 stories, paint peeling, one upstairs window left open even though the rest were boarded shut. I parked under a flickering streetlight. It blinked in uneven rhythm, throwing the house into flashes of light and shadow. I sat there for a moment, listening. At first, nothing. Just the usual hum of crickets and the wind slipping between the trees. Then, faintly, a sound. Not quite a scream. More like a strained breath. Long, trembling, human. It was coming from the open window upstairs. I called it into dispatch. They confirmed no one should be living there. The utilities had been shut off for months. Unit 7 responding. I said quietly, possible trespass. Checking the property. I stepped out of the car. My flashlight beam cut through the dark, landing on the front porch. The wood looked warped, black and near the base. I started toward it, one slow step at a time. The air smelled damp, like old wood and something else, metallic, faintly sweet. The front door was slightly open. Just a sliver. Sheriff's Department. I called. If anyone's in there, come out where I can see you. No answer. I pushed the door open. The hinges groaned loud enough to echo down the street. Inside, the air was stale, heavy with dust and something rotting beneath it. I could see my breath in the beam of my flashlight. The living room was stripped bare. No furniture, just outlines where things had once been. A single shoe sat near the corner, too small for a man's. I kept my voice low. If someone's hurt, I can help you. That's when I heard it again. A muffled cry. Short, sharp, then silence. It came from upstairs. Every instinct in me said to wait for backup. But backup was 20 minutes out, and if someone really was hurt in there, time mattered. So I went up. The stairs creaked with every step. My flashlight shook slightly in my hand. I kept trying to steady it, telling myself it was just nerves. Halfway up, I noticed the wallpaper, torn in strips, curling outward like it had been clawed. Underneath, it would look darker, as if something had soaked through it years ago. When I reached the top, the sound came again, louder this time. It wasn't a scream anymore, it was words, but too quiet to make out. There were 3 doors in the hallway. One was shut, one open, and one hanging crooked on a broken hinge. The sound came from the closed one. I stopped outside it and listened. A low voice, strained and broken, whispered from inside. At first, I couldn't tell if it was talking to me or about me. I heard, he's here again." My hand froze on the doorknob. I wanted to say something, anything, but the words stuck in my throat. When I finally pushed the door open, it swung slowly inward, scraping the floor. The flashlight beam hit empty space. The room was bare, dust everywhere, cobwebs thick enough to shimmer like threads of glass. And in the corner, nothing but an old chair facing the window. The open window, the curtains fluttered faintly. Even though the air outside was still, the temperature dropped so fast my breath came out in clouds. Then, faintly, the sound again, a voice, but not from the room, from the radio on my shoulder. Static first, then clear as day. He's still in there. I froze. The voice wasn't dispatch. It wasn't anyone I recognized. It was a woman's voice, low, shaking. Before I could respond, the radio cut to static again. I stepped closer to the window. My flashlight beam stretched across the backyard. Nothing, just overgrown grass and a rusted swing set half buried in the dirt. Then the chair moved, barely an inch, but I saw it, the faintest scrape of wood on wood. I stepped back. "Hello?" I called out. No answer. The silence felt thicker now, pressing in around me, and then something behind me creaked. I spun, flashlight sweeping across the doorway. Empty hall, but the door at the far end of the hall, the one that had been open, was now shut. I walked toward it slowly, my heart beat loud in my ears. My boot scuffed the floor, stirring up dust. When I reached the door, I hesitated. The handle was ice cold. I opened it. It was a bedroom, small, stripped bare like the rest of the house, except for one thing. There were handprints on the inside of the window, small ones, like a child's, pressed into the glass from the inside out. 5, 6, maybe 7 of them, all at different heights. And near the floor, something else, a phone, a landline, cracked and yellowed, sitting directly under the window. The cord had been cut clean through. That was when I noticed the smell. Stronger now, metallic, like rust or blood. I took one step closer to the window and saw it clearly this time. The handprints weren't just smudges. They were stains, dark, dried, old, and between them, faint words scratched into the glass. 3 letters. S-T-A-Y. My chest tightened. The air felt heavier. The room darker somehow, like the light from my flashlight couldn't quite feel it anymore. And then I heard it, from downstairs, a loud bang, like the front door slamming shut. I ran to the stairs and shined my light down. Empty, the door was closed tight, though I knew I'd left it open. My radio crackled again. Static, then that same voice. "Don't go. He's not done." My skin crawled. I shouted into the mic. Who is this? Identify yourself. Nothing. Just static. And under it, faint breathing. Slow, ragged, right in my ear. That's when the light flickered. Once, twice, then went out. The darkness was absolute. I stood there, frozen, hand on my holster, trying to listen. No footsteps, no movement, just breathing. Close, too close. It sounded like it was coming from just behind me. I turned, nothing, but I could feel it. That same heavy presence, like something standing inches away, just out of sight. Then the voice came again, not from the radio this time, from the room upstairs. He's here, soft, almost pleading. I backed toward the door, every part of me screaming to get out. When I reached the front step, I didn't look back. I got in the car, locked the doors, and called for backup again. This time, the radio worked, clear as day. They said no other units had been near me, no other voices on the channel. And when the backup arrived 15 minutes later, the house was empty. No signs of anyone, no footprints, no fresh prints on the glass. Even the open window upstairs was shut tight. But as I was leaving, I noticed something through the windshield. In the upstairs window, the one that had been open before, I could have sworn I saw the curtain move. Just once, like someone inside was watching me leave. When backup finally cleared me to go inside again, I thought it would be simple. Just another welfare check. Another house that got under my skin for no reason. But as soon as I crossed that threshold again, I knew something had changed. The air felt different. Thicker, heavier. The smell was sharper too, like dust and something faintly metallic underneath. I'd been in plenty of abandoned homes before. This one didn't feel abandoned. It felt paused, like whoever lived here had just stepped out, planning to come right back. The beam of my flashlight cut through the dust, landing on a couch covered by a white sheet. The fabric sagged in the middle, stained in spots. I brushed my gloved hand over it. The dust came off in a wave, thick enough that I could smell it. But underneath, there was a clean streak, like someone had been sitting there recently. I froze, looked around. Everything else in the room was blanketed in age. Coffee table, picture frames, bookshelves, all coated gray, except that one patch on the couch. I crouched to get a closer look and saw a faint indentation. The kind you'd leave if you sat for a long time. A chill ran through me. Sheriff's department. I called out again, voice low. If someone's here, step out. You're not in trouble. No answer. Just the sound of my own voice bouncing off the empty walls. The living room opened into a hallway that led deeper into the house. The wallpaper there had peeled in long strips, curling at the edges every few feet. I'd see a nail in the wall. No pictures left, just empty outlines where frames used to hang. I shined a light on the floor. Dust everywhere, but not all of it was settled. Some parts looked disturbed, like someone had been walking barefoot through it. The faintest impressions. I followed them. They led me toward the kitchen. As I stepped through the doorway, I noticed something strange right away. The counters were empty, the sink dry, but the refrigerator door was ajar, humming softly. That didn't make sense. The power should have been off for months. I reached for the handle and pulled it open slowly. The light inside flickered once, then steadied. The shelves were bare except for a single glass jar on the top rack. It was filled with water. Clear, clean water. No dust on it. No grime, like it had been placed there recently. I stared at it for a long time, my pulse starting to climb. Then, in the quiet, I heard something faint. Footsteps, not from above or below. From the next room. Soft, slow, careful. I turned my light toward the sound. The dining room. When I stepped in, I saw the table first. Long, wooden, covered by another white sheet. There were plates beneath it, faint outlines visible through the fabric. I lifted the edge just enough to see underneath. 3 plates, still set, forks and knives in perfect order. But one plate had a smear of something dark on it. I leaned closer. The smell hit me first. Iron, blood, fresh enough that it hadn't dried all the way. I stepped back, stomach tightening. Something about this didn't feel right. It wasn't just vandalism or squatters. It was deliberate, like someone wanted me to see this. Then came another sound, a faint thump from upstairs, that same open window. I swallowed hard and called it in. Unit 7 requesting additional backup at Willow Street. Possible active situation. Static. I repeated it. Still nothing. The radio was on, but no voice came through. I climbed the stairs again, flashlight trembling in my hand despite how tightly I held it. Every step seemed louder than before. At the top, I noticed something new. The dust on the hallway floor had been disturbed. Tracks, small, like a child's, ran from one room to another. They weren't there before. I followed them. They led to the same room with the window. But this time, the chair was turned around. It faced the door. My throat went dry. "Who's there?" I said quietly. Nothing. The curtains moved again, just slightly. When I stepped inside, the air shifted. Colder, heavier. I could hear the faint hum of my radio again, but the words were buried in static. I walked closer to the chair, shining the light down at the floor. 2 sets of footprints now. One smaller, one larger. Neither were mine. The smaller one stopped at the window. The larger one stopped right behind the chair. I took a step closer. My boots creaked against the floorboards. The light trembled across the wall. And that's when I noticed it. There were marks scratched into plaster. Hundreds of them. Small, uneven lines overlapping. Like someone had dragged their nails across the wall again and again until the skin split. The scratches formed faint patterns, almost like letters. But only one stood out clear enough to read. Still here. I backed away, pulse hammering. Then, the radio snapped to life. "You shouldn't have come back." The voice was the same one I'd heard before. A woman's voice. I gripped the mic. "Identify yourself." Silence. Then, "He hears you now." That was it. Just that. I spun toward the door, shining my light down the hallway. For a second, I thought I saw something, just a shape, half hidden in the dark at the end of the hall. Tall, still, then the beam flickered. Gone. I took a shaky breath and started backing toward the stairs. Every part of me screamed to leave, but some stupid part, needed to understand. At the bottom of the stairs, I saw movement. Something on the floor by the front door. I pointed the light and froze. It was a trail of water, small puddles, leading from the entrance toward the living room, each one in the shape of a bare foot, like someone had just come inside. Soaking wet, I followed the trail, my breath shallow. The prints stopped near the couch, the same couch with the clean patch of fabric, except now the sheet was gone, folded neatly on the floor beside it, and sitting where that indentation had been was something else, a small object, a toy car, rusty, bent on one side, but recent enough that I could see the red paint glint in my flashlight. I picked it up carefully. It was warm. I don't know why that detail stuck with me the most. Not the voices, not the footprints, not the way the air in that house felt alive, but that small, warm toy car sitting where no one should have been. And then laughter. Faint, distant, children's laughter. Just for a second, echoing through the empty halls, bouncing from room to room. I turned, flashlight swinging across the walls. Nothing, just dust swirling in the beam. But the sound didn't fade. It stayed, faint and echoing, until it started to sound like something else, like crying. Then it stopped. The house went dead silent. I didn't wait anymore. I left the toy where it was and backed toward the door, my hand on my holster, every instinct screaming to run. When I stepped outside, the air hit me like a wave, cool, clean, real. But as I stood there catching my breath, I realized something. The window upstairs, the one I just left, was shut again, and behind the curtain, for half a second, I saw movement. Not a face, just the faint outline of a hand. Small, pale, pressed against the glass. Watching. I called dispatch again. This time, the signal came through. But when they asked me to confirm my location, I turned to look at the street sign, and my blood ran cold, because there wasn't one. The post was there, but the sign itself had been torn off, like someone didn't want this place to be found again. I don't think I'll ever forget the sound that old house made when it settled. It wasn't the usual creaks or groans you hear in Warrenwood. It was something else, something almost alive. like the house was breathing. That night, after calling the report and waiting for backup that never came, I decided to do one more sweep, just to be sure. Something inside me said I'd missed something above. The hallway upstairs felt colder than before. My flashlight flickered over those peeling walls and the long cracks running up to the ceiling. I'd already checked the bedrooms, the bathroom, every closet. Nothing. But as I stood there, staring at the ceiling, I realized air vents weren't humming anymore. The whole house had gone quiet. Completely quiet. That's when I heard it. A whisper. Soft. Barely there. It came from somewhere above me, high up through the ceiling. At first, I thought it was the wind moving through a vent or maybe a loose pipe shifting in the crawl space. But when I turned off my radio and just listened, I heard it again. And this time I was sure. It was a voice. It wasn't words I could understand. More like someone muttering under their breath. A slow, steady rhythm, like a lullaby being spoken instead of sung. My chest tightened. I moved down the hallway, following the sound, and that's when my light caught it. A small, square outline in the ceiling. The attic door. It was barely visible to the layers of dust and cobwebs, but it was there, and hanging down from it was a cord, the kind you pull to open it. The cord swayed just slightly, though there was no draft. I stood there for a moment, trying to convince myself I wasn't hearing what I thought I was. My training told me to clear the area, wait for backup, treat it like a break-in. But my gut, that deep, instinctive part of me that had saved my life more than once, told me the opposite. It told me not to go near it. But I did. I reached up, hand shaking a little, and tugged the cord. The door creaked open just an inch, slow and dry, like it hadn't been moved in years. Dust drifted down in thin, gray ribbons, catching the beam of my flashlight. The whispering stopped. Completely. I froze, holding my breath, for a few seconds. The silence was so deep I could hear my own heartbeat. Then, from the darkness above, came a soft thump, like a footstep, not loud, but heavy enough that I felt it through the wood under my boots. I took a slow step back, reaching for my radio again. Dispatch, this is Unit 7. Possible intruder in the attic. Request immediate. Before I could finish, a sharp pop of static filled my earpiece, followed by a faint, distorted voice. Don't go up there. I froze. It wasn't dispatch. It wasn't anyone on my channel. I turned the radio off completely, and then, right above me, the attic door creaked again. This time, it opened wider, just enough for me to see the faint black gap between the door and the frame. I should have left right then. Should have walked out and waited for someone else to check it out in the morning. But there was something about the silence that held me in place, like the house was waiting for me to make a move. I grabbed my flashlight tighter and slowly pulled the cord the rest of the way. The door swung down, groaning. A set of old wooden stairs unfolded with a snap. I aimed my light up. It barely reached the top. All I could see were the edges of the beams, thick dust, and what looked like old insulation hanging loose. The air that drifted down smelled strange, like burnt wood and something faintly sweet underneath. I climbed the first step. It groaned under my weight, but it held. Step 2, another creak. Step 3, that's when I heard the whisper again. But this time it was clearer. He's here. It wasn't angry. It wasn't even loud. Just calm, like it was stating a fact. I froze mid-step, every muscle in my body tensed. Then something soft brushed past my arm. I swung the light, fast, but there was nothing, just dust floating in the air. Another whisper came, this time from my left. Don't look. I almost fell off the ladder. I stumbled back down the steps, catching myself on the railing. My flashlight hit the floor and rolled away, the beam spinning across the walls. The attic door above me creaked again, slowly closing on its own, not slamming, just drifting down, inch by inch, until it clicked shut. The cord stopped swaying. I stood there for what felt like minutes, staring up at it, breathing hard. My flashlight lay on the floor, its beam aimed at the ceiling. Dust kept falling from the edges of the door, like something had been moving up there. Finally, I bent down and picked up the light again. When I looked back up, I noticed something new. Right beside the cord, carved into the ceiling, were small scratches, shallow, uneven. I raised the light higher, trying to see the pattern. They formed letters. A single word. Stay. The grooves looked fresh. No dust settled in them. I took a shaky breath and backed toward the stairs. Every step I took felt watched. The house seemed to listen, with shifting softly as if adjusting its weight. When I reached the bottom of the stairs, I heard it again, faint movement above me, but this time it wasn't whispers. It was breathing, slow, heavy, like someone lying flat on the floor above, their mouth pressed close to the boards. Listening, I killed my flashlight and stood there in the dark. For a moment, everything was still. My heart pounded so hard it almost drowned out the sound. Then came 3 slow knocks, right above my head. Even through my boots, I felt each one. I don't remember leaving the house. Not really. One second I was at the bottom of the stairs. The next I was outside, gulping the cold air, my flashlight shaking in my hand. The porch light flickered once, then went out completely. I stood there staring at the upstairs window, the one that faced the attic. It was dark, and then, just faintly, I saw a movement behind the curtain. A small hand pressed against the glass. It stayed there for maybe 2 seconds and then slid away. When I got back to my cruiser, I radioed dispatch again. This time, they answered right away. Unit 7, we've been trying to reach you. You okay? I didn't answer for a moment. My throat was dry, and my voice felt far away when I finally spoke. Yeah, I said quietly, just a false alarm. But even as I said it, I knew that wasn't true, because when I started the engine and looked up at the house one last time, the attic door was open again, and hanging down through the darkness was that same cord, gently swaying from side to side. Like something up there was still waiting, still listening, still awake. There's something about silence that feels heavier after you've heard whispers. It's not really silence anymore. It's like the air remembers the sound. It carries the echo of it, even when nothing's there. That's what the house on Willow Street felt like that night. After what happened in the attic, I sat in my cruiser for almost 10 minutes, engine running, lights off. I tried to calm down, tell myself it was just exhaustion, maybe some kind of auditory illusion, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I kept replaying that last moment. The creak, the whisper, the hand on the glass. By the time I finally forced myself to step out of the car again, I noticed something strange. The street was darker than before. All the porch lights that had been on earlier were now dead. Even the street lamp at the corner, the one that buzzed all night, had gone out. The only light came from my cruiser's headlights, slicing through the fog that had started to settle low over the road. The air smelled different too, damp, metallic, like a storm was brewing, but the sky was clear. I told myself I'd just do one more check, a perimeter sweep, before calling it in as secure. That was protocol, after all. But deep down, I think I knew I wasn't just checking for safety. I was checking to see if what I saw in that window had followed me out. The front yard was still. The trees didn't move, not even a leaf rustling. The grass looked almost black under the light. I circled the side of the house, my flashlight beam sweeping across the siding and windows. That's when I noticed the first one, a shadow on the wall. It looked like mine at first, until I realized my light wasn't hitting it. It was darker than the rest, a perfect outline of a person standing sideways against the house. Still, too still. I turned slowly, expecting someone behind me. No one was there. When I turned back, the shadow was gone. Just gone. I stood there for a long moment, trying to think logically, maybe a reflection from my cruiser, or a trick from the beam of my light. The windows here were dirty, uneven. Old glass could bend light in weird ways. That's what I told myself, anyway. Then I saw another one. This one was on the ground, stretched long, thin, like it was cast by someone standing under a spotlight that didn't exist. I moved my flashlight slowly toward it, trying to find what was making it. Nothing. The beam touched the edge of it, and it moved, like it was trying to stay out of the light. I stumbled back, hitting the side of the house. My pulse was racing so hard it felt like I could hear it in my ears. And then I saw another, and another. They were everywhere. Shapes, outlines, human but wrong somehow. Arms too long, torsos that bend in impossible ways. Some of them clung to the walls like stains that wouldn't wash off. Others moved along the ground, slowly, like they were crawling. All of them were made of darkness, but not the kind that comes from the absence of light. It was thick, heavy, like smoke, but it didn't move right. It didn't drift, it slid. I swept the light across the yard, tried to keep track of them, but every time I turned, more appeared. My breath caught in my throat as I realized something. They weren't following the beam. They were following me. I took a step back toward the cruiser, my boots crunching on the gravel. One of the shadows nearest to me stretched longer, like it was reaching. Its edge touched my boot, and I swear I felt it, cold, like ice water, soaking through my skin. I gasped and stumbled backward, shining the light directly onto it. The second the beam hit, the shadow recoiled, shrinking fast into grass before vanishing entirely. I didn't wait to see where it went. I ran. The air outside felt thicker now, like fog was wrapping around my legs as I moved. I kept the light aimed ahead, scanning for the cruiser, but the fog was so dense, the beam barely reached 5 feet. My radio crackled to life suddenly, and for a split second, I felt relief. Unit 7, do you copy? I grabbed it fast. This is Unit 7, But before I could finish, the static cut in again. Then came a faint voice. They don't like the light. I froze. It wasn't dispatch, and it wasn't my voice either. I turned the flashlight around just in time to see a shape move across the fog behind me. Tall, thin, its head tilted to one side. The beam caught it for half a second before it slid back into the mist. Then another appeared to my left, and another behind it. They weren't chasing me exactly, just surrounding me. Everywhere I turned, I saw them, flickering, stretching, bending in ways that made my stomach twist. I started to run again, toward where I thought the cruiser was. My flashlight bounced with every step, catching glimpses of the house as I passed. The windows, the porch, the roof line. That's when I noticed something. The shadows on the house weren't matching mine anymore. They were moving on their own. In the upper window, I saw one crawl across the glass, its hands pressed against the inside. Another one leaned forward on the roof, peering down at me with a head that wasn't shaped quite right. I don't even remember screaming, but my throat burned. When I finally reached the cruiser, I yanked the door open and slammed it shut behind me. My heart was pounding so loud it drowned out everything else. I turned on the headlights and froze. They were all standing in front of me, dozens of them, silhouettes against the fog. Not solid, but not transparent either. Just outlines of people, motionless, facing me, every single one. Their shapes shimmered slightly, like heat waves. And as I stared, I realized some of them were mimicking my movements, tilting their heads, shifting their arms, just slightly out of sync. It was like they were trying to learn me. I couldn't breathe. I turned on the siren, hoping to break whatever spell was hanging in the air. But the sound came out wrong. Slow, warped, and then the lights flickered. Not the cruiser's lights. The ones outside. Street lamps. House windows. Distant porch bulbs. All of them began to flicker in unison, like the whole street was breathing through electricity. When the lights steadied again, the figures were gone. Every single one. The fog was still there, but thinner now. The only movement came from the trees at the far end of the block, swaying slightly in the breeze that had finally returned. For a few seconds, I just sat there, gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles went white. Then I noticed something on the windshield. A smear, long and dark. It looked like a handprint, not made of dirt or grease. It looked burned into glass. I reached out slowly, touched it with my finger. The glass was cold, too cold. And then, from the corner of my eye, I saw something move. In the reflection of the side mirror, a figure, standing right behind the car. I spun around, nothing there, but when I looked back at the mirror, I could still see it. The same outline, still there. And that's when I realized the shadow wasn't behind the car. It was under it. The reflection was catching something that wasn't visible to the naked eye. I leaned closer to the glass, trying to see, and the shadow moved. Fast, crawling up the side of the cruiser. like ink spilling through water. I threw the car into drive and hit the gas. Tires screeched, gravel flew. I didn't look back. I just kept driving, straight down Willow Street until fog thinned and the lights came back. By the time I reached the main road, my breathing had evened out a little. The shadows didn't follow me. But when I parked outside the station and stepped out, something caught my eye. My shadow. It wasn't moving right. It lagged just slightly, half a second behind me. And for one horrifying moment, I saw it raise its hand before I did. It started like any other night. The kind of quiet that makes you think maybe the city finally ran out of ways to hurt itself. I was sitting in my patrol car, parked on the shoulder of Route 17. Windows cracked just enough to hear the crickets and the distant hum of power lines. It was close to midnight. My shift was half over, and I hadn't had a single call worth noting. I remember thinking how strange that was, because Willow County never really slept. Someone was always drunk or fighting or lost. But that night, nothing, until the radio hissed. At first, I didn't even notice it. Static is just part of the job. Radios are old, whether it gets away. Towers cut out. It happens. But this one sounded different. Sharper somehow, like the sound had teeth. It came in sudden bursts. A crackle, a pause, and another. I reached the mic. Dispatch. This is Unit 7. I'm getting some interference on the channel. You reading me? For a moment, just more static. Then, under it, something faint. A voice. I almost didn't catch it. Like someone whispering from the bottom of a well. It wasn't clear, but it had a rhythm. Not random noise. Words. I leaned closer, instinctively lowering my own voice. Say again. The whisper stopped. The static went flat, long and drawn out. I pulled the mic closer. Dispatch confirmed transmission. Still nothing. Then, right before I let go of the button, a single word came through. Help. Just that. One breath of a word. Like it was being dragged out of someone's throat. Then silence again. My first thought was prank. It happens sometimes. Bored kids. Stolen radios. Even broken CBs bleeding through the frequency. But something about the way it sounded, it didn't feel like that. It felt personal. Dispatch. This is Unit 7. I said again, trying to sound steady. Possible distress call on open channel. Can you confirm? I waited. No answer. Just static. And behind it, I swear I heard breathing. It was faint, uneven, like someone close to the mic, but too weak to talk. My skin prickled. The car suddenly felt smaller, the air thicker. I turned down the heater, without thinking. Who is this? I asked quietly. You need help? Nothing. Then, he's here. That time it was clearer, not the same tone as before either. The voice was strained, shaky, definitely human. Who's there? I said, my heart starting to race. Where you calling from? The radio popped, the static spiking so loud I winced. I pulled the mic away, and that's when the background changed. I heard something else in the noise, a faint rhythm beneath it. Tap, 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 like footsteps on a wooden floor. And then another whisper. Don't come. I froze. The sound wasn't distant anymore. It was close, right in my ear, like someone sitting in the passenger seat and leaning in to speak. I dropped the mic. It hit the floor, the speaker hissing from under the dash. I just sat there for a few seconds, staring at the radio like it might start bleeding. My breath fogged the glass. I looked out the road. Empty still. I finally picked the mic back up, my voice lower. Dispatch. This is Unit 7. I think someone's on our frequency. Possible emergency. Please advise. And this time, Dispatch answered. Copy, Unit 7. What's the nature of the emergency? Relief hit me hard. Unconfirmed at this time. I said quickly, possible open distress transmission. I'm trying to isolate location. Understood, she said. Can you provide audio? I hesitated. Negative. Signal's weak. Lots of interference. Static again. I tried to replay what I'd heard in my head. The tapping, the breathing, that voice. The tone wasn't panicked. It was resigned, like the person already knew help wouldn't come in time. And that phrase, he's here, I decided to check the signal log. The department had recently added a system that records all incoming transmissions, tagging them by frequency and strength. I scrolled through the list on the small screen. There was a week, flickering entry time stamped at 0:12 a.m. But what caught my eye was a location tag. Rural frequency bounce. No fixed origin. Meaning, it wasn't coming from any known radio tower or patrol car. It was coming from somewhere else. I tried triangulating it manually, just out of habit. The system gave a rough coordinate. A section of road about 5 miles north. Willow Street. My stomach sank. Willow Street had been empty for years. Half the houses abandoned after that gas leak back in '09. Nobody lived there anymore. Dispatch, I said, swallowing hard. Looks like the call's bouncing from Willow. I'll check it out. Copy that, the operator said. Backup. I hesitated. Negative. It's probably nothing. I'll update if I find anything. That was my mistake. I put the car in gear and started down the road. The trees on either side blurred past, their bare branches cutting through the beam of my headlights like claws. The farther I drove, the weaker the radio signal got, until it was just a faint hiss again. Then it came back, louder this time. Don't come. Same voice. This time, the words were sharper, rushed, like whoever was could hear me getting closer. I tightened my grip on the wheel. This is Officer Cole with the Willow County Sheriff Department, I said, forcing authority into my voice. If you can hear me, I'm coming to assist. Please stay where you are. Silence. Then the radio popped, and a sound came through that didn't belong there. Not a voice. A hum. Low. Deep. Like the sound you get when electronics are too close to each other. Except this one had weight to it. It wasn't just feedback. It almost vibrated in my chest. The hum grew louder the closer I got to the old turnoff. And then, just as I slowed the cruiser, it stopped. Everything went dead. Radio, engine, lights, even the clock on the dash froze. I sat there in complete darkness. The only sound was my own breathing. I tried the ignition. Nothing. The keys wouldn't even click. Then the radio flickered back to life for half a second. He sees you. It was so faint I almost thought I imagined it. Then static again. I didn't move for a while after that. Just sat there, staring out the windshield at the empty stretch of road. My flashlight was in the passenger seat, but I didn't reach for it. I didn't want to, because for the first time in my career, I felt like turning on the light might make something look back. After a few minutes, the power came back on. The dashboard lights blinked. The radio crackled softly again, normal this time. I called in as equipment malfunction. Told dispatch I'd return to base for maintenance. But when I put the car in reverse, I caught something in the rear view mirror. A faint shape standing at the far end of the road. Too far to see clearly. Just a silhouette, motionless in the fog. I blinked and it was gone. I told myself it was just a trick of the lights. Some reflection off the mist. But when I checked the radio log again later, the system had tagged another transmission. Same timestamp as the moment I saw it. One word. Closer. I didn't sleep much after that first night. I told myself it was just a radio glitch. Static interference. Maybe even some idiot with a scanner messing with me. But the truth is, I didn't believe that. Something about that voice, those broken words, stuck in my head like a splinter. The next night, I was back on shift. Different route this time, near the industrial park on the east side of town. Everything was quiet again. Too quiet. I was halfway through my thermos of burnt coffee when the radio hissed back to life. Same tone, same sharp static. At first, just noise. Then the rhythm started. A faint tapping pattern. Then a voice. But this time, it wasn't saying help. It was counting. 721. Pause. 471. Then it stopped. I froze. Those weren't normal radio test codes. Not dispatch frequencies. Not call signs. Just numbers, said slowly, like they meant something. Dispatch, this is Unit 7, I said. Receiving unidentified numeric transmission. You picking this up? Nothing. The voice repeated, softer now. 721471. I wrote them down on my notepad. The numbers looked strange on the paper. like they were meant to spell something, but I couldn't see it yet. "Identify yourself," I said into the mic. "You're on a law enforcement frequency. Do you need help?" The voice cut out. Then came a faint hum, low, distant, familiar. That same heavy tone from the other night. It seemed to pulse through the static, like a heartbeat buried in white noise. And then, go. Just one word. Then silence. I sat there, staring at the radio, my pulse climbing. Go where? I looked at the numbers again. 721471. They felt like coordinates. I pulled up my map app and punched them in. Nothing came up. But when I split them, 72.1471, it pinned somewhere just outside town, right off Willow Street. Of course. I almost laughed. I wanted to ignore it. I really did. But something in me, a mix of curiosity and dread, wouldn't let it go. I started the cruiser and drove. Willow Street at night. Looks like something the world forgot. The houses sit in rows like hollow teeth. Windows blacked out. Yards overgrown. Fences leaning like they're tired of standing. The moon was low, pale, too bright for that much silence. When I turned onto the street, the radio hissed again. For 391, the same voice. Go. The coordinates changed. I followed. It led me past the empty houses, past the old church that had burned down years ago, and into the part of town where the street lights don't work anymore. Each time I stopped, the radio went quiet. Each time I turned the engine off, it started again like it was waiting for me to move. I knew how insane it was. Following a disembodied voice that spits out random numbers. But the thing is, I couldn't stop. The last set it gave, 4,391. Lined up with a dirt path near the train yard, a forgotten access road used by the old maintenance crews. I parked at the edge of it, left the headlights on. The radio was still, no sound now but the faint hum of the engine and the crackle of the power lines overhead. For a few minutes, I just sat there. My hand hovered over the door handle. The air felt thicker here, heavier, like the night itself was pressing down on me. I stepped out. The ground crunched under my boots. Dry gravel, broken glass. Somewhere far off, a train horn moaned, long, hollow, distant. Then, faintly, from the radio still hissing inside the car, I heard it again. 7-2. The voice was weaker now. Choppy. 1-4. It cut in and out, the words dissolving into static. I leaned back into the car and grabbed the mic. "If you can hear me, I'm here." Say again. No response. Then, barely audible, came the sound of footsteps. Not mine. Not from outside. From inside the transmission. Crunch. Crunch. Slow. Deliberate. Like someone walking through gravel. Just like me. Then whispering. Not words this time. Just breath. I turned off the radio completely. Silence. But the air didn't feel empty. It felt occupied. I scanned the area with my flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, hitting the rusted fence, the piles of old timber, the outlines of graffiti on cracked concrete. No movement. Then I saw it. Faint tire marks in the dirt. Fresh. I followed them a few feet before they vanished near an old concrete drain. Something about it looked wrong. The metal cover was half open, like someone had pried it up recently. A cold draft rose from the gap, and then my radio, off, remember, clicked on by itself. Down. One word. I felt my stomach twist. "Dispatch, this is Unit 7. I said quickly. "Possible unauthorized access at old train yard. I need confirmation on." Static. Then the voice again. "Down now." That last word came with such force, I actually flinched. I took a step back from the drain. My flashlight trembled slightly in my hand. Every rational part of me said to leave, to report it, call for backup, let someone else deal with it. But another part, a smaller, darker part, whispered something else. What if someone's really down there? I crouched by the drain, trying to peer inside. My light hit metal steps, a narrow shaft, and at the bottom, water glimmering faintly. I couldn't see much else. Then, from somewhere deep inside, a faint metallic clang, followed by the sound of breathing. Slow, wet, close. That was enough for me. I backed away, fast. I got in the car and locked the doors. The radio crackled again, louder this time. Don't stop. That's when I noticed a map display on my dashboard had turned on by itself. The GPS was active. Even though I hadn't touched it, it showed a blinking, moving across the map, my cruiser's location, and another ahead of me, moving toward me. I froze, watched as the second dot crept closer, 1 pixel at a time. The radio screamed static, and in the middle of it, one last whisper. Behind you. I spun around. Nothing. Just a field, the dark, the silent skeletons of power lines reaching up into the night. I didn't wait. I floored it, gravel spraying from under the tires. The radio went silent as soon as I hit the main road again, like whatever that was couldn't follow past tracks. By the time I got back to the station, it was nearly 3 in the morning. I tried to play it off, said I was chasing a false signal. But when I checked the dispatch logs, something didn't make sense. Every transmission from that night was recorded, but not mine. Nothing from Unit 7 existed after 12:48 a.m., except one file, a 3-second clip labeled 721471. I played it. There was static, then the same voice whispering one word, drawn out, almost pleading, "Stay," and then a sound like someone exhaling right next to my ear. After that night, the voice didn't come back. The radio stayed quiet. But sometimes, when I drive past a train yard on late shifts, my GPS flickers. Just for a second, and for that second, a number shows up on the screen, always the same. And beneath it, in faint gray text, barely visible, there's one word. Go. I didn't sleep after that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard the static again. The faint numbers looping over and over my head like a broken signal. 721,471. I told myself I'd imagine it. The voice, the movement on the GPS, all of it. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. Something had happened out there at the train yard. Something I couldn't explain. The next night, I was on duty again. I almost called in sick, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. That wasn't me. You don't just skip your shift because you got spooked by a radio glitch. Still, when the clock hit midnight, and I found myself driving near Willow Street again, I could feel that same weight in my chest, like the air was pressing down harder the closer I got. Everything was quiet, too quiet. No wind, no animals, no cars. Even the sound of the cruiser seemed muffled, like the night was swallowing it. And then the radio clicked, just one soft pop, like someone had turned it on from the other side. I felt my throat tighten. Unit 7, go ahead, I said, trying to sound calm. Who's on frequency? Nothing. Then a whisper, not words this time, just breathing, long, uneven. I gripped the mic tighter. If you're there, speak clearly. This is a police frequency. Still nothing. Then, just before the static faded, I heard it, a faint voice, distant and stretched. Back! I froze. Say again. Come back! That was enough to make my stomach drop. I checked the GPS again. Same coordinates as before. 72.1471. I didn't want to go back there. Every instinct told me to stay away. But the voice sounded real this time. Human. Weak but pleading. Before I knew it, I was turning the car around. The drive felt longer this time. The roads looked different somehow. Narrower, darker. Streetlights flickered as I passed them, their glow stuttering like dying bulbs. By the time I reached the edge of town, the static had come back. Soft, constant, and through it, faint words. Numbers again. 1934, then silence. When I punched those numbers into the system, they didn't come up as coordinates. They came up as an address. 1934 Willow Street, the old boarding house. I remembered that place. Condemned years ago, after a fire in the back kitchen. Nobody lived there anymore. Windows boarded up. Police tape still half buried in the grass. I parked out front. The street was dead quiet. Even the usual hum of the power lines was gone. For a long minute, I just sat there, engine running, hands on the wheel. My pulse felt too loud in my ears. Finally, I stepped out. The air was colder here. Not the kind of cold you feel in your skin. The kind that seeps into your bones, makes your fingers stiff even though the night isn't freezing. The porch creaked under my boots. My flashlight cut across the front door. Paint peeling. No trespassing sign half torn away. That's when I saw it. In the dust on the porch floor, faint footprints, bare feet, small, leading toward the door, and right next to them, numbers drawn into the dirt. My breath hitched. I took a step back. The wind picked up suddenly, a single sharp gust that made the loose boards groan. The radio on my shoulder hissed again. Behind, I spun around. Nothing, just the road. Empty houses. I turned back to the door, and it was open, not all the way, just enough to see the dark inside. I swear I hadn't touched it. I raised my flashlight. The beam slid over dust, broken furniture, old wallpaper peeling in strips. The air smelled like burnt wood and mildew. "Police," I called out. "If someone's inside, make yourself known." My voice echoed through the house, thin and hollow. Silence. Then a creak. From upstairs. My stomach turned. I didn't want to go in, but I did. Every step I took, the floor moaned beneath me. The sound felt too loud in that quiet space. When I reached the stairs, I saw more footprints, dusty impressions leading up. And halfway up the steps, one of them stopped abruptly, like whoever was had vanished mid-step. At the top of the stairs, the air changed. It felt charged. The hall stretched ahead, lined with old doors, all slightly ajar. The whispers started again, faint, distant, impossible to place. I couldn't tell if they were coming from the radio or from the walls themselves. "You left us." I froze. That was clear. That wasn't static. That was speech. I aimed my flashlight at the nearest door. The beam shook as it hit the frame. "You left us here." My throat went dry. "I don't know who you are," I said quietly, "but I didn't leave anyone." The whisper stopped. Then, from the far end of the hall, the sound of something dragging, slow, heavy, uneven. I took one step forward, and another. The air grew colder with each one. The beam of my light flickered, dimmed, then came back. The dragging sound stopped, and the door at the end of the hallway, the one directly under the attic, creaked open on its own. I stared at it for what felt like a full minute before I finally spoke. "Dispatch?" I whispered into the mic, even though I knew what would happen. "I need backup at 1934 Willow." The radio shrieked, loud, high-pitched, like feedback pressed against my skull. I ripped it off my shoulder, dropped it. The sound kept going, but it wasn't coming from the radio anymore. It was coming from upstairs, the attic. That's when I realized the house was breathing. The walls pulsed faintly in the beam of my light, like they were expanding and contracting. The whispering grew louder again, overlapping now. Dozens of voices tangled together. "Stay. Don't leave. You left us." I turned and bolted. Down the stairs, out the door, across the porch. When I reached the car, I looked back just once. The house was still, silent, but in one of the upstairs windows, the curtain moved, and behind it, a shadow, just standing there, watching. I don't remember driving back. I just remember the lights of the station, and the way my hands were shaking on the wheel. When I handed in my report, I didn't mention the voice, or the numbers, or the shadow in the window. I said I'd checked the property, found nothing, and cleared the call. That was it. But the thing is, ever since that night, I haven't been alone on shift. Every time I sit in the cruiser, I hear it, just faintly, under the hum of the radio. A breath, a whisper. Sometimes when I pass by the old streets, my GPS flickers, and the same numbers appear, 721,471. For a second, then vanish. I've tried ignoring it, tried convincing myself it's all in my head, but it's getting worse. Last night, as I was writing my report, I heard something new through the static, a voice I recognized, my own. "Go back." And I swear, for a split second, I saw something move in the reflection of the monitor. Someone standing behind me, just outside the glow of the screen. When I turned around, there was nothing there, but the chair next to mine was still swaying, like someone had just been sitting in it.